Chapter 420. Jade Pipa Crystal. Mythical. A few simple words left Zhou Wen's heart palpitating as he nearly shouted out loud. However, just as Zhou Wen was about to put it into his phone, a notification popped up. Requires 41 Constitution, 21 Spatial Stat, Spatial Type Life Providence, Spatial Type Life Soul. If your stats don't meet the standard, you can't absorb it. Not only are there special stat requirements, but there are also life providence and life soul requirements. I've never seen a spatial stat before, so I don't know where to get it. The Constitution requirement is 41, which means that it's basically impossible to master a mythical primordial energy skill at the epic stage. This is because typical epic experts can only reach 40 Constitution at most. Zhou Wen couldn't help but feel depressed after seeing this. His Godfiend Life Providence and Lost Country should be able to satisfy the Life Providence and Life Soul requirement. However, the stats were indeed a little troublesome. The requirements were too high, but he still had a chance of absorbing it. He wasn't like ordinary people who didn't even have a chance. Zhou Wen naturally didn't plan on really selling this item. Since he could use it, he naturally had to keep it for himself. When he obtained enough stats, he could absorb it and comprehend a mythical primordial energy skill. Just the thought of an epic using a mythical primordial energy skill was exciting. After putting the crystal into the chaos space, Zhou Wen looked at the bone flute in his hand. Any crystal the flower had taken out was at the mythical stage. It was likely that the bone flute would be of great use. Since she said that he could only use it once, Zhou Wen didn't give it a try. He used his phone to take a picture, but there was no reaction. After putting the bone flute into the chaos space, Zhou Wen thought of something. The chaos bead had the first order of chaos primordial energy art. Zhou Wen had also gained basic mastery of it, but he didn't continue cultivating it. However, this primordial energy art was most likely spatial, similar to the Godfiend era. Zhou Wen knew too many primordial energy arts, so he really didn't have the energy to study the first order of chaos. However, now that he thought about it, it didn't seem like it was a burden to have more skills. Those mythical primordial energy skills had requirements for life providences and life souls. Perhaps they could be used in the future. Of course, Zhou Wen only had this thought. Now, he didn't have the energy to study the first order of chaos. He needed to condense the other life souls before advancing to a perfect body. If he couldn't break through to the mythical stage, he would have enough time to study it. Although he had taken the flower's bone flute, Zhou Wen didn't plan on using it. The flower said that the bone flute could help him defeat his enemies, but Zhou Wen wasn't sure what the actual situation was. If this thing was the key to opening Chess Mountain's seal, wouldn't he be in huge trouble? Before he returned to the encampment, Zhou Wen's phone rang when he arrived at a place with a phone signal. He looked at it and saw that it was a message from Wang Lu. The message had been sent for some time, but Zhou Wen hadn't received it because he was in a place without a signal. "Do you need help?" Wang Lu's message was very simple. "I can handle it. I'll return after I settle the matter here," Zhou Wen replied. "I'll wait for you. You have to make up for the breakfast you owe me." "Soon," Wang Lu replied. "How are we going to make up for this? Didn't you always buy it? If breakfast isn't enough, lunch will make up for it." "All right." After chatting with Wang Lu for a while, he realized that the Dharch had sent him a message. From the looks of it, her phone had been charged. Zhou Wen found it odd as he thought to himself, "It's just a flower. How does it use things like generators?" When he clicked on the Thearka's message, he saw that she had sent him a dynamic smiley face. She sure learns quickly. She even knows how to use emojis. Zhou Wen didn't reply, afraid that he wouldn't have time to do anything else if she kept chatting with him. Seeing that Zhou Wen didn't reply, the Dharch sent a series of emojis over and bombarded him with emojis. Zhou Wen naturally ignored her. After a while, the Dharch finally said, "Is there something wrong with my use of emojis? Why aren't you answering me?" Usually, people who have nothing better to do will post emojis. I thought you were fine when you posted it, Zhou said. When he was in high school, a female classmate added Zhou as a friend. From time to time, she would send him emojis, but Zhou never replied because he didn't know the meaning of emojis or how to reply. Oh, I see. The Dharch was enlightened. Now that you have a generator, you don't have to worry about not having electricity. You can go online and watch those television dramas. It's very interesting. Zhou hurriedly introduced a few classic sitcoms to her. Zhou thought to himself that it would be great if she watched those television dramas and was influenced by the characters and ideals in the television dramas to become a joker. At the very least, she wouldn't have the thought of killing humans. I would have done a great service. Alright, I'll go take a look. Remember to top up my phone bill. If I get hung up, you're dead. The Dharch sent a message. She even knows how to top up her phone bill. Zhou was helpless. Thankfully, he had just received benefits, so he didn't care about the phone bill. Furthermore, he had saved quite a lot of phone bills on his phone. As long as she didn't make crazy calls and only went online, he didn't need to pay any more phone bills this year. He didn't know if the Dharch had gone to watch a television drama, but she didn't send any more messages. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief and sped up his return to the encampment. Lu Su came to look for Zhou again that night, but she realized that he hadn't returned. Just as she was about to return, Zhou returned from outside and was walking over. Zhou, Lu Su called out to Zhou. Dr. Lu, do you live here too? Zhou walked over and asked. I don't live here. I came specially to look for you, Lu Su said. Look for me? What's the matter? Zhou looked at Lu Su in puzzlement. Why didn't you report to the medical team? Lu Su asked. Zhou thought for a moment and said, to be honest, I'm actually not an intern doctor. This identification is just to make it convenient for me to stay in the encampment. That's not important. Since you already have the identity of an intern doctor, you should do what an intern should do, right? I've been studying rashes, hoping to resolve this virus, but I haven't made much progress. Can you tell me what medicine you used? If there's a need to keep your medicine a secret, there's no need to tell me the exact ingredients. I just want to know if there will be antibodies formed after using your medicine. Will there be any side effects? If it can form antibodies without any side effects, I hope you can take some out. I'll apply for funds to buy them and inject the soldiers with this medicine. This way, there will be fewer casualties, and it will be of great help to the future battles. Even if I can't form antibodies, I hope to buy a batch as backup, Lu Su said quickly. Chapter 421. Dr. Lu, I'm really sorry. I didn't use any medicine. Actually, what I used to treat those soldiers was an ability of my companion beast. As for antibodies, I don't know either. I don't know how long the effects of a companion beast's skills can last either. Although I want to help you, there's really not much I can do. If another soldier suffers such injuries, you can call me at any time, Zhou said. Upon hearing Zhou's words, Lu Su was somewhat disappointed. Companion beasts' primordial energy skills typically had a time limit. They were useful at that time, but they were useless after that time. They wouldn't form antibodies. In this era, the use of companion beasts in medicine is becoming more and more widespread. To have such a companion beast means that you have the good qualifications to become a doctor. Are you interested in learning some medical knowledge from me? Lu Su felt that it would be a waste for Zhou to not be a doctor with such a companion beast. Zhou shook his head and said, I'm really sorry. I still have many things to do. I don't usually have much time. Although Lu Su was somewhat disappointed, she didn't say anything else. Since Zhou had the ability to treat the rashes, it was already an unexpected gain. It could reduce many casualties. This matter didn't end there. In a few days, Lu Su would discover that the soldiers who had been injected with the poison by Zhou were already immune from the rashes. Even if they were stationed by the river, they wouldn't have any rashes. Although Dr. Darkness was only at the epic stage, he wasn't an ordinary companion beast. Be it his background or abilities, he was very special. Zhou returned to his dorm and finally had a good sleep. After waking up, he first went to the underground sea and gave the black dragon a palm strike. The black dragon already had a few poisonous boils formed from palm print. Although the poisonous boils hadn't killed it, it was obvious that the black dragon's mental state was somewhat abnormal. If the other 8 black dragons were muscular youths, then this black dragon was like an old man in his twilight years. Its movements had become much slower in all aspects. Furthermore, it looked a little muddle-headed, as though its mind was no longer clear. From the looks of it, the poison has already affected it greatly. I wonder how long it will take to poison it to death. What Zhou was looking forward to the most was the black dragon companion beast dropping. When this fellow was chained up, be it his speed, strength, or abilities, they were greatly weakened. Once he was unchained, Zhou wouldn't even last a minute in front of the black dragon before being killed. The difference was just too great. If he could obtain the black dragon companion beast, he might be able to have a true mythical fighter. He wouldn't need to slowly nurture it like Banana Fairy. Although it was indeed fun to nurture it from the beginning, its combat strength was indeed lacking. Furthermore, it was too slow. Tyrant Behemoth was still at the legendary stage. It was unknown when it would advance to the epic stage. For 2 consecutive days, the Dharch didn't send him a message. Zhou could finally read and game in peace, but the mortal stage monsters in the game dungeons were almost wiped out by Zhou. There was no point in grinding any further, so all he could do was continue reading. Jacker won't give up, will he? It's been a few days. Why hasn't there been any movement? Zhou didn't make any progress in his reading, so he began to miss Jacker. Fighting such a fellow, the feeling of facing death directly was terrifying, but it also gave him a vague sense of excitement. At that moment, Zhou felt that his thoughts had become much clearer. His thoughts had also become more active and nimble. At that moment, Jacker was so excited that he couldn't control himself. In front of him was a white-haired old man. The old man looked demented as he sat there motionless. As for his body, it emitted a strange sanguine glow. Especially his eyes, they shimmered with a red glow. The blood hex clown possessed the old man's body and replaced his will to control his body. Even the memories in his mind were controlled. From the old man's memories, Jacker discovered a huge secret. This old prisoner actually had a mythical companion beast. He had never told anyone about this. He had paid a huge price to silently nurture a mythical companion beast to the epic stage. He originally imagined that he could rely on a mythical companion beast to become an overlord in the future, but the resources needed to advance a mythical companion beast were just too much. He couldn't afford it himself, so he could only use his job to obtain some information. In the end, just as he nurtured his companion beast to the epic stage, something happened. He was secretly arrested by the Bureau and locked up in Heaven Prison. As his position was relatively special, and he had embezzled some special items, it wasn't convenient for him to be dealt with publicly. Therefore, the Bureau took over. As he was only a corrupt criminal, the Bureau only interrogated him as usual. They didn't waste any resources or use overly intense method. The Elder endured it and didn't reveal the matter of the mythical companion beast. This time, he had also been sent to Jacker by Shinyuchi. It was originally because he had a companion beast that could change colors and disguise itself. This was something Jacker wanted. However, he never expected Jacker to discover this huge secret in his memories. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. What a fool! With such a mythical companion beast, he was easily captured by the chaos of the Bureau. Even with a mythical companion beast, he's still trash. But this is a good deal for me. Without any hesitation, Jacker activated the Blood Hex Clown's ability and controlled the Elder's body. He made him pay the price of his life to forcefully transfer his companion beast to Jacker. When the man collapsed like a corpse, a strange tattoo appeared on Jacker's arm. It was a purple cat-shaped tattoo. Shin-Yuchi, oh Shin-Yuchi, no matter how much you calculated, you never expected that I, Jacker, would have such luck, right? With this mythical companion beast, the taboo you left on me can no longer restrain me. After I enjoy a delicious meal, I'll definitely head to the capital and kill everyone in the bureau. Jacker looked at the purple cat tattoo on his arm as the excitement on his face intensified. When Jacker snatched the elder's mythical companion beast, Zhou wore a look of delight. After waiting for so long, the fruit on the dead man tree finally ripened and fell from the tree. His phone automatically vibrated to indicate that Zhou had obtained the fruit in-game. Mythical companion egg. Do you want to incubate it? When the blood-colored avatar caught the fruit, a notification popped up on his phone. Mythical companion egg. Zhou was pleasantly surprised. Although he had already guessed it, seeing a mythical companion egg still made him unable to contain his excitement. He hurriedly looked at the mythical companion egg's stats. Chapter 422. Demonic Neonate, Mortal, Evolvable, Life Providence, Son of Dimension Life Soul, Supreme True Demon Wheel of Destiny, 1 Revolution Strength, 11 Speed, 11 Constitution, 11 Essence Energy, 11 Talent Skill, Demonic Sword Companion Form, none. What's going on? Zhou was dumbfounded. He was momentarily at a loss. This demonic neonate's stats were too strange. Zhou originally imagined that he could directly incubate a mythical companion beast. After all, he had Dr. Darkness as an example, but from the looks of it, that wasn't the case. From the mortal stage and evolvable stage, this was likely the initial state of a mythical companion beast. However, even a mythical creature wouldn't have a life providence or life soul at the mortal stage. They had to slowly advance before condensing them. However, demonic neonate actually had a life providence and life soul at the mortal stage. She also had a wheel of destiny that Zhou had never seen before. He didn't know what was going on. Although he didn't know what was going on, Zhou still incubated her first. After absorbing a lot of essence energy, the purple copper-like companion egg transformed into a stream of light that fused into Zhou body. It transformed into a thumb-sized purple-haired baby girl that appeared on Zhou arm. Zhou summoned demonic neonate. It was about 40 to 50 centimeters tall, about the size of a doll. It had long purple hair and wore purple armor. In its arms was a strange companion beast that held an ancient purple copper sword. It appeared in front of Zhou. Zhou saw that her face was no different from the fierce girl. However, her figure was much smaller, about the size of a baby. As Zhou sized up the girl, she stared back at him with widened eyes. She seemed to be sizing him up as well, leaving him alarmed and puzzled. The companion eggs produced by the dead man tree were all stranger than the last. Dr. Darkness was already shocking enough, but this demonic neonate seemed to have her own thoughts just after being incubated. With a thought from Zhou, demonic neonate accepted his orders. She carried the ancient sword in her arms and walked to a table by the side. With a gentle leap, she landed on the table and poured a cup of tea for Zhou. When Zhou saw that she was as obedient as an ordinary companion beast, he immediately felt relieved. He got her to do some things, and demonic neonate completed them according to Zhou's instructions. Although it's a little strange, it should be fine. Zhou unsummoned demonic neonate and took out his phone to enter the game dungeon. After choosing, he chose the Myriad Buddha Cave in Dragon Gate Grotto. After entering, he summoned demonic neonate. Most of the monsters in the dungeon had been killed by Zhou. There were still some scattered golden warriors in Myriad Buddha Cave, but Zhou couldn't be bothered to waste time searching for them one by one. Now, he could use them to test demonic neonate's strength. After searching for a while, he finally found a golden warrior. Zhou ordered demonic neonate to kill the Golden Warrior and see if she could do it. Golden Warriors were at the legendary stage and had astonishing defense. As for demonic neonate, she was only at the mortal stage. Logically speaking, demonic neonate shouldn't be a match for a Golden Warrior. However, demonic neonate had a life providence and life soul that ordinary legendary creatures didn't have. Zhou had brought her here to see if her life providence and life soul could be used. Demonic neonate received Zhou's order, but she stood there without moving. She hugged the ancient sword and looked at the Golden Warrior. Is she afraid? As Zhou was thinking, he suddenly saw the ancient sword in demonic neonate's arms automatically leave its scabbard. It transformed into a purple beam of light and flew out. Even Zhou didn't see the sword beam clearly before the Golden Warrior was cleaved into two by the sword beam. It dropped a dimensional crystal that dissipated. The flying sword circled around before automatically returning to the scabbard demonic neonate was hugging. What a powerful primordial energy skill. This is definitely not at the level of a mortal primordial energy skill. It's even stronger than my transcendent flying immortal. Logically speaking, such an primordial energy skill should expend a large amount of primordial energy. The amount of primordial energy at the mortal stage isn't enough to support such a powerful primordial energy skill. How did she do it? Zhou was alarmed as he constantly sized up demonic neonate. After some thought, Zhou unsummoned demonic neonate and switched dungeons before entering the Zhuolu battlefield. The Zhuolu battlefield was very vast. Zhou ran very far in-game before finally finding a surviving Qi. He summoned demonic neonate again, and got her to try killing it. Although the Qi wasn't as powerful as the mutated stone Qi, it was still top-notch at the epic stage. Demonic neonate continued hugging the ancient sword as she coldly looked at the charging Qi. When the Qi approached her, the ancient sword in her arms automatically unsheathed itself and transformed into a purple beam of light that slashed at the Qi. The Qi let out a roar as the black smoke above its head condensed into a dragon-shaped life soul. It spewed out black smoke at the purple beam, hoping to use the black smoke to block it. Zhou had seen how powerful the black smoke was, but the purple sword beam sliced through the black smoke, life soul, and Qi like it was tofu. Zhou was dumbfounded as he watched the ancient sword return to its scabbard. Demonic neonate hugged the ancient sword and remained standing there expressionlessly. This fellow is really impressive. Is this still a mortal companion beast? If she continues advancing, what kind of changes will there be? Zhou felt that demonic neonate's advancement wouldn't be like that of ordinary mythical creatures. After all, she already had a life providence and life soul. It was hard to imagine what would happen if she evolved again. Condense a second life providence and second life soul? Or strengthen her original life providence and life soul? Zhou couldn't guess it. Furthermore, the wheel of life soul gave Zhou an odd feeling. Unfortunately, I don't have a true mythical companion beast. I wonder if I'll have such a thing after advancing to the mythical stage. Zhou guessed inwardly, but he didn't have an answer. Now, no humans could advance to the mythical stage. Only the 6 families had some mythical companion beast. Zhou didn't have any friends in the 6 families, so he had nowhere to ask. However, I've finally confirmed one thing. Although demonic neonate is still at the mortal stage, her combat strength is stronger than most epic creatures. Just one demonic sword strike is probably enough to kill most epic creatures. This is for you. You have to work hard in the future. Zhou took out an epic companion egg and gave it to her. It had dropped previously, so Zhou couldn't bear to feed it to his companion beast. However, he hadn't been grinding dungeons recently, so he didn't have the chance to have any companion eggs drop. There was only one, and he had left it in the game dungeon. To his surprise, demonic neonate only glanced at the epic companion egg before turning her head to the side. Her cold attitude left Zhou even more depressed than contempt. Chapter 423. You aren't even eating an epic companion egg. Aren't you being a little too picky? Zhou thought to himself that if it were Tyrant Behemoth, it would have long run over like a pug. This fellow actually ignored it. Demonic Neonate still stood there with a cold expression without any reaction. It was as though she would only move when Zhou gave the order. Forget it. You will naturally eat it when you are hungry. Seeing that there was no hunger notification on his phone, Zhou placed the companion egg in the game dungeon again. It wouldn't be too late to retrieve it when Demonic Neonate was hungry. This isn't a solution. I can't grind dungeons now, but my companion beasts need to eat, especially Tyrant Behemoth. If I hadn't incubated quite a lot of food for it and slowly controlled it to eat, allowing it to live, I'm afraid it would have run out of food long ago. Zhou thought about it but couldn't come up with a good solution. All he could do was wait for the black dragon to die before grinding. Lu Su was reading a report. It was a random inspection report of a few soldiers, and the results shocked her. The soldiers that Zhou had saved had recovered in less than 2 days. However, the scars on their bodies would take some time to disappear, but it didn't stop them from participating in battle. A breakout creature had appeared the day before yesterday. A large number of soldiers had participated in the encirclement, but some of them were drenched in blood. 3 of them were the ones Zhou had saved. The other soldiers had red rashes on their bodies and fainted on the spot. They were dragged into the river, but the 3 of them were fine. They were lucky to escape the calamity. Lu Su asked someone to draw their blood for an experiment, but the results showed that they already had a high resistance to the rash. Even if the virus entered their bodies, it would not cause too much damage. Instead, they would slowly die and not be able to reproduce and spread. How can this be? If it's 1 or 2, it can be said to be a coincidence, but all of them are like this. There's only one possibility. The power of Zhou Wen's companion beasts really made their bodies produce antibodies. The more Lu Su thought about it, the more she felt that she was right. This discovery excited Lu Su. Although there was no medicine, Zhou Wen's companion beast abilities were more effective than medicine. If all the soldiers had such resistance, they would be much more proactive in their battles in Chess Mountain. At the very least, they wouldn't have to worry about falling into the blood river and could fight in it. There was also no need to worry about getting a rash after standing guard for too long. This way, more people could be sent to strengthen the surveillance, and it would be easier to deal with the situation if something happened. Previously, because the soldiers couldn't stay by the river for long periods of time, although they had enough manpower, they could only split into several groups and constantly rotate. With Zhou Wen's ability, there was no need to go through so much trouble. They could set up more sentry posts and expand the surveillance range. This time, Lu Su wasn't in a hurry to find Zhou Wen. Instead, she went to Qin Wufu's office. Qin Wufu was handling official matters when he heard the guard inform him that Lu Su wanted to see him. He stopped what he was doing and got the guard to invite Lu Su in. Although Lu Su was only in her 30s and her position wasn't considered high, the medical team was related to the lives of tens of thousands of officers and soldiers. Qin Wufu didn't dare slight her. "Su, why are you looking for me?" Qin Wufu didn't put on any airs. Furthermore, Lu Su's family had some ties with him. He had always treated Lu Su as a junior. Lu Su said, "Uncle Qin, I want someone from you." "Who's so important to make you come here personally?" Qin Wufu asked Lu Su curiously. After Lu Su took charge of the medical team, she didn't use her relationship with him to raise any conditions. However, she managed the medical team in an orderly manner. The soldiers also approved of her. This made Qin Wufu very satisfied. Now, Lu Su suddenly asked for a person. This made Qin Wufu very curious about who she wanted. "An intern doctor," Lu Su said. Qin Wufu was even more puzzled. He looked at Lu Su and asked, "The medical team is under your management. Why are you asking me for an intern doctor if you want one?" With that said, Qin Wufu came to a realization. "You want to recruit new interns, right?" It's not that Uncle Qin doesn't want to help you recruit them, but there are too few people studying medicine now. Ever since the dimensional storms, the chances of humans falling sick have decreased year by year. There are fewer people studying medicine. Furthermore, a military doctor needs to have medical skills. Uncle Qin, there's no need to recruit new doctors. I just want an intern doctor in the encampment, Lu Su said. An intern doctor in the encampment? Qin Wufu was slightly taken aback. He knew that Lu Su wasn't someone who would cause trouble for no reason. Since she said she wanted this person, there was definitely this person in the encampment. He's in the encampment and not under Lu Su's control. Qin Wufu immediately thought of Zhou. He looked at Lu Su with an odd expression and asked, "Don't tell me the person you want is Zhou? Uncle Qin, you do know him." "That's right. I want him. I hope he can join the medical team and become an official member of the medical team," Lu Su said. Qin Wufu looked at Lu Su and asked, "Why do you want him?" Qin Wufu found it extremely odd. He knew very well that Zhou was just an ordinary university student. He didn't study medicine. He had casually filled out the proof of being an intern doctor for Zhou. It was mainly to make it convenient for Zhou to come and go from the encampment without training with ordinary soldiers. "With him, you can resolve a problem in your heart, Uncle Qin," Lu Su said solemnly. "Oh, what's the problem?" Qin Wufu asked Lu Su with interest. "The rash problem. With Zhou, our soldiers won't have to be afraid of the blood-colored river in the future. They won't have rashes again. They can always guard the sentry post and won't need to be rotated often. They can also fight in the blood-colored river," Lu Su said word by word. "What? Are you sure?" Qin Wufu stood up in shock and asked Lu Su. Lu Su was right. This was indeed a problem for him. Because of this problem, the army had lost at least 40% of its combat strength. Their monitoring of Chess Mountain was also relatively weak. In the past, with Yan Zhen around, although Yan Zhen's temper was a little strange, he could help him resolve these problems. Now, although Lu Su's medical skills were also superb, she couldn't resolve these strange problems. However, Yan Zhen had disappeared and Qin Wufu had been unable to contact him. There was no news of Yan Zhen from the forensics team, giving Qin Wufu a headache. When Lu Su suddenly said that Zhou could resolve the problem of the blood river, Qin Wufu was pleasantly surprised and in disbelief. The few soldiers Zhou saved were previously infected with rashes, and it had already flared up. Later, Zhou cured them. After they were cured by Zhou, their bodies no longer feared the blood river. "These are some experimental data I did." Lu Su handed the information she had brought to Qin Wufu. Chapter 424. After Qin Wufu finished reading the information, his expression turned odd. However, Lu Su said excitedly, "Uncle Qin, with Zhouwen's ability, our deployment at Chess Mountain won't be so passive." "I'm afraid I can't give this person to you," Qin Wufu said. Lu Su couldn't help but be taken aback as she asked in puzzlement, "Why? Uncle Qin, don't you believe me? I can guarantee that this information is true. The ability of Zhouwen's companion beast can indeed effectively form antibodies, allowing the soldiers to no longer be afraid of the blood in the river. The side effects are also very small." "No, Susu, you misunderstood me. I believe in your research and information, and I know that Zhou does have such an ability. However, I still can't give him to you. Or rather, I don't have the authority to give him to you," Qin Wufu said with a bitter smile. "You are the commander-in-chief of Chess Mountain. How can you not have the authority? What's Zhouwen's background? Could he be sent by the Federation?" Lu Su asked in puzzlement. "No, he should be considered a member of the Sunset Army, but his identity is somewhat special," Qin Wufu said. "Regardless of his identity, since he is a member of the Sunset Army, even if he is the overseer, he has the obligation to protect the lives of the soldiers. He has the responsibility to contribute his strength," Lu Su said solemnly. If he was the overseer, that would be easy. Unfortunately, he isn't, Qin Wufu said. Uncle Qin, who is he? Lu Su couldn't hold it in any longer. His name is Zhou. The man Madame Lan married also has the surname Zhou. What do you think his identity is? Qin Wufu said. Lu Su immediately widened her eyes and said in surprise, Madame Lan actually found such a young husband. Isn't this old Niu? What nonsense are you talking about? Madame Lan's husband was Zhou Wen's father. Zhou Wen was still studying at Sunset College and was still a student. In the past, he had studied under Wang Mingyuan for a period of time, so the bureau had targeted him and wanted to capture him for interrogation. Madame Lan placed him with us in the hope that we can protect him. Now that you're getting him to treat those soldiers, how am I to answer to Madame Lan if something happens to them, if there are people from the bureau among them? Qin Wufu berated. Lu Su came to a sudden realization. So that's how it is. But if that's the case, even if it's for Madame Lan's sake, shouldn't he be more willing to help? Nonsense. If I say no, then no. I can't let anything happen to him. It wasn't that Qin Wufu didn't want Zhou Wen to help. However, Anxing had repeatedly instructed him not to let anything happen to Zhou Wen or interfere with his actions. If anything happened to Zhou Wen, Madame Lan would definitely pursue the matter to the end. When that happened, even the overseer probably wouldn't be able to stop her. Qin Wufu knew that Tianzhua was the most filial. If Madame Lan said one thing, even if Tianzhua was unwilling, it was impossible for him to say otherwise. Qin Wufu knew Madame Lan's temper. Although Madame Lan usually seemed easy to talk to, if she really touched her bottom line, she was someone who couldn't be stopped. Lu Su was rejected by Qin Wufu, but she refused to give up. She could clearly avoid the deaths of so many soldiers, so why couldn't she use Zhou Wen? Lu Su felt that Zhou Wen wasn't a foppish scion. From her impression of Zhou Wen, she felt that he was a very gentle person who was very willing to help others. He didn't have the temper of a young master. Uncle Qin said no, but if Zhou Wen is willing, that's another matter. Lu Su decided to convince Zhou Wen herself. After Lu Su left, Qin Wufu looked at the information in his hand and couldn't help but mutter to himself, "It's really a pity for this Zhou Wen. If he hadn't been embroiled in Wang Mingyuan's matter, his future would have been limitless. Now that he's been targeted by the bureau, it's hard to say if he'll be able to grow up in the future." Lu Su came out of Qin Wufu's office and went straight to Zhou Wen's. Zhou Wen was reading a book when Lu Su came and explained the reason for her visit to Zhou Wen. After Lu Su finished speaking, Zhou Wen looked at her and said, "Dr. Lu, if it were in the past, I would definitely be duty-bound, but I'm afraid I can't agree to it now." Lu Su sighed and said, "I can understand. After all, you've been targeted by the bureau. If you have too much contact with the soldiers, it will give the bureau an opportunity to take advantage of you." Zhou Wen shook his head. "I'm not worried about my safety, but I'm afraid that the soldiers will be implicated by me." Lu Su didn't say anything else. She felt that Zhou Wen's words were just an excuse. No matter how powerful the bureau was, it was impossible for them to forcefully charge into a military camp to kill people. How could they endanger ordinary soldiers? Lu Su believed that Zhou Wen had only said that to save her face. However, Lu Su didn't think there was anything wrong with Zhou Wen's actions. After all, everyone only had one life. There was nothing wrong with cherishing one's life. Everyone had the right to protect themselves. Therefore, Lu Su didn't say anything. Although she was somewhat disappointed, she decided to return and give it a try. She wanted to see if she could extract antibodies from the soldiers that Zhou Wen had treated. Although it might take a long time, Lu Su had no other choice. "Dr. Lu, if there's nothing important, I hope you won't come to my place in the future. If there's anything, it's best if you send me a message." Zhou Wen felt that if Lu Su came to his place frequently, she might be implicated. A person like Jacker was best at using others' weaknesses. As long as he could achieve his goal, Zhou Wen believed that he would do anything. Don't worry. I won't disturb you again. Lu Su couldn't help but be completely disappointed when she heard Zhou Wen's words. After walking out of Zhou Wen's dormitory, Lu Su prepared to return to study the antibodies. After taking a few steps, she saw a person in an officer's uniform walking over. The officer walked with his head lowered. The brim of his hat covered most of his face, so Lu Su didn't see what he looked like. When he came close, the officer looked up. Lu Su looked at the officer and found him somewhat odd. The officer in front of her looked to be in his 30s, and his face was somewhat pale. It wasn't rare to see officers in their 30s in the Sunset Army, but this officer clearly looked like someone from the West District. He was very different from the people from the East District. Although the Sunset Army also had officers from the West District, there weren't many of them. Lu Su should know all of them, but she had never seen this officer before. Just as she was about to ask, the officer raised his hand and pressed it on her shoulder. Lu Su wanted to dodge, but her body didn't listen to her. The hand still pressed on her shoulder, and she immediately felt her body stiffen. She couldn't move. She opened her mouth, but she couldn't even make a sound. The officer smiled at Lu Su and asked elegantly, "You came out of Zhou Wen's room just now, right?" Chapter 425. Zhou Wen had been wearing the Truth Listener earring the entire time. Although he was still in the room, he immediately discovered the problem. He opened the door and walked out, only to see Jack standing there in his officer uniform. "We meet again. Not bad. You protected my ingredients very well." Jack stared at Zhou Wen's body and sized him up as though he was observing him as his food. "Aren't you afraid of being surrounded by entering the military camp so brazenly? Aren't you able to escape like the last time? Or could it be that this is just an avatar of yours?" Zhou Wen stared at Jack and sized him up. Jack smiled sinisterly. "It's hard to say who will be surrounded. As for whether this is my main body or an avatar, you can guess. If you guess correctly, I can let you choose the cooking method to be enjoyed by me." Zhou Wen silently held the bamboo blade. He didn't want to guess, nor did he say anything nonsense like letting Lu Su go. To a person like Jack, those words were meaningless. In his eyes, life was probably inferior to an ant. To Zhou Wen's surprise, Jacker pushed Lu Su, pushing her towards him. However, Zhou Wen didn't help Lu Su up. Instead, he took a few steps back and allowed Lu Su to stagger and fall to the ground. Lu Su was stunned. She didn't know what Zhou Wen meant or why he wasn't even willing to help her up. Just as she was about to stand up, she heard Zhou Wen say, "Sit there and don't move." Although Lu Su didn't know what Zhou Wen meant, she knew that the situation wasn't right. When she heard Zhou Wen's words, she sat on the ground and didn't stand up. She had roughly guessed that Jack was from the bureau. "Shall we call for help?" Lu Su asked Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen shook his head slightly and looked at Jack. Jack laughed. "There's no need to be so nervous. I did plant a life blast on her, but I didn't plan on detonating it. Actually, it's not just her. Everyone in the entire military camp, apart from you, has been planted with a life blast. As long as I want to, I can hold a fireworks show here at any time. Do you want to see it?" When Lu Su heard the words life blast, her body trembled. Clearly, she knew what it meant. She also knew why Zhou Wen hadn't helped her up. If Zhou Wen had touched her, she might have already exploded. "Zhou Wen, don't worry about me. Inform the deputy governor. We can't let such a person leave no matter what," Lu Su said through gritted teeth. "Looks like you don't believe me." Jacker snapped his fingers. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions sounded in the camp. Zhou Wen and Lu Su watched helplessly as the body of a nearby soldier who was walking over exploded. Such explosions sounded several times in other parts of the camp. Zhou Wen counted inwardly, and there were a total of 5 explosions. The entire military camp was in chaos. There were alarms everywhere as the soldiers rushed to the scene. To Jack, Lu Su looked at the blood not far away and was dumbfounded. It wasn't that she had never seen dead people. Many people had died in battles with dimensional creatures, but this was the first time she had seen someone die like this. Now, Lu, said that one. Lu. Wolf God. Lu. Lu, one was, Su was Wei. Dong. Lu, I Su. I Zhou, Lu was one. Now, Lu Su finally believed what Zhou had said. He wasn't afraid that someone among the soldiers would harm him, but that he was afraid of implicating them. How did you do it? Zhou asked Jack without a change in expression. He had later checked the information on Life Blast. It was similar to his poison dragon palm. He needed to come into contact with a life medium to use Life Blast. Furthermore, the process was more complicated than the poison dragon palm. It wasn't as simple as a slap. It was easy to use small animals like ants and leaves as a medium, but it wasn't that easy to use humans as a medium. Zhou didn't believe that Jack had planted Life Blast on everyone in the encampment. He felt that it was very likely that Jack was just bluffing. Perhaps he had only planted Life Blast on a few people. Jack said with a smile, "If someone else were to ask this question, I wouldn't even bother answering, but you are different." With that said, Jack extended his hand and a purple cat appeared in front of him. The cat was covered in short purple fur. Its tail was curled up, but its eyes were black. Furthermore, one of its eyes had two pupils, making it look very demonic. Mythical Cursed Cat Demon. Although it's still at the epic stage and hasn't truly advanced to the mythical stage, its abilities are very compatible with mine. After having it, I don't need to plant Life Blast myself. All I need to do is add Life Blast to its curse. Everyone who is cursed by it will automatically be planted with Life Blast, Jack said excitedly. The Cursed Cat Demon and his abilities were a perfect match, greatly enhancing Jack's abilities. There should be a limit to curses, right? It's impossible for this cat to curse whoever it wants. Zhou glanced at the chaotic camp and continued speaking to Jack. Of course there are restrictions. No power is completely unlimited. Although the Cursed Cat Demon is a mythical creature, it also has restrictions. However, this restriction isn't a problem for me. Therefore, everyone in this camp, including this woman, has become my bargaining chip. If you don't wish for all of them to turn into fireworks, follow me obediently, Jack said. Why don't you just plant a curse on me? Wouldn't that be more convenient? Zhou asked again. Such a top-notch ingredient naturally can't be contaminated at all. Otherwise, it would be a huge waste. Before I make you into a delicacy, I won't let you suffer any damage. As Jack spoke, he saw Qin Wufu rush over with a group of epic officers. With such a strange explosion at the encampment, Qin Wufu immediately thought that something had happened to Zhou. If a dimensional creature from Chess Mountain had rushed out, it wouldn't have remained silent. He could tell at a glance that it was a Life Blast. Governor Qin, don't come over, Zhou said to Qin Wufu. If it was really as Jack had said, that everyone had been planted with a Life Blast, then Qin Wufu and the epic officers were terrifying bombs. An epic life energy explosion wasn't at the level of those soldiers. The entire encampment would probably be flattened instantly. Zhou didn't want to be blasted to death. He's from the bureau? Qin Wufu stopped and looked at Zhou and Jack before looking at Lu Su, who was sitting on the ground. Finally, his gaze landed on Jack. Although he could only see Jack's back, he was certain that this person was from the bureau. Although he was wearing a military uniform, he didn't have the bearing of a soldier. Chapter 426. Long time no see, Qin Wufu. Jack turned around and looked at Qin Wufu. When Qin Wufu saw Jack's face clearly, he was immediately alarmed. Impossible, Jack. How did you come out? Back then, Qin Wufu had participated in the operation to capture Jack. Many of his comrades in the Federation had participated in the operation with him. Back then, Qin Wufu was still in his prime. He had joined a group of epic experts in the Federation to capture the murderous maniac, Jack. Back then, he didn't have any fear. He only had the passion to eliminate evil for the people. However, as the operation progressed, more and more of his companions were silently killed by Jack using various means. Furthermore, they had only seen Jack a few times. This made Qin Wufu realize that Jack was a terrifying devil, a cunning fox, and a sinister venomous snake. He had the qualities that all evil people needed. He was a natural devil. There was a scar on Qin Wufu's back that spanned across his entire back. It was left behind from the battle back then. If not for his extraordinary life providence, he would have died in that battle. Jack's name immediately made the expressions of some middle-aged soldiers change drastically. Murderous maniac, Jack, was a name their parents often used to scare them when they were young. If they made a mistake or kept being vexed, their parents would say that the murderous maniac, Jack, was coming to take them away and eat them. It was a childhood trauma. Even though they had already grown into epic existences, they still subconsciously felt fear when they heard this name. An epic officer who was 27 or 28 years old had clearly never heard of Jack's name. He might have heard of him, but he didn't have a deep impression of him. After all, Jack had already been captured when he was born. No matter who you are, you can't do whatever you want here, the young epic officer said coldly. He boasted that he was a genius. He had advanced to the epic stage at the age of 27 or 28. He wasn't much inferior to the geniuses of the 6 families. Unfortunately, he didn't know how terrifying the person in front of him was. He had also underestimated what kind of existence a person who could leave a demonic name in the history of the Federation was. Jack didn't even look at him. All he did was snap his fingers. Boom! The young officer's body exploded, and the terrifying shockwave caused the nearby houses to collapse. Although the officers reacted very quickly, they were too close. Many officers were injured, and the surroundings were immediately in a mess. From now on, all of you shut up. I don't have time to waste on trash like you. Whoever dares to spout nonsense will end up like this, Jacker said coldly. He. A hot-tempered officer was about to rush at Jack, but he was stopped by Qin Wufu. Jacker, what are you trying to do? Qin Wufu stared at Jacker and asked. I only want him. Jack pointed at Zhou and said, Follow me now. If you dare say no, I'll turn everyone here into fireworks as a celebration before I enjoy the delicacies. Zhou, listen to me. Leave this place immediately. Leave this place to me. Qin Wufu stared at Jacker as his body shimmered with light. A suit of armor appeared on his body. The other officers and soldiers also summoned their companion beasts, ready to fight at any moment. From the looks of it, you still don't know what's going on. Then I'll wake you up, Jacker said as he raised his hand to snap his fingers. Jacker, wait a moment, Zhou said. Jack stopped and looked at Zhou with interest. Why? Have you thought it through? Zhou nodded and said, I've thought it through. I'll go with you. Zhou didn't agree to go with Jacker because of Qin Wufu and company. He wasn't afraid of Jacker to begin with. Furthermore, he had to find Jacker's true body and completely get rid of him. Even if he attacked now and killed Jacker in front of him, he didn't know if this was Jacker's second puppet avatar. Zhou, you can't do that. Leave this place immediately, Qin Wufu shouted. Governor Qin, Jacker has planted a life blast in the entire military camp. As the commander-in-chief of Chess Mountain, do you want everyone to die with me? Zhou only wanted to leave as soon as possible. He didn't want to waste any more time. Everyone's expressions changed drastically when they heard this. If everyone had been planted with a life blast, wouldn't they explode like the young officer from before? That's impossible. Life blast needs contact to be released. We have never seen him before, Qin Wufu said with a change in expression. You should have seen it before, right? Jacker pointed at the cat at his feet. Everyone looked at the cat and their expressions changed. This was because they had indeed seen the cat before, but they had accidentally seen it. However, when they paid attention again, they didn't see it again. They thought they were seeing things. Now they realized that something was amiss. Furthermore, the young officer's self-destruction had chilled their hearts. "Do you want me to prove it to you?" Jacker said coldly. "There's no need. I'll go with you." Zhouwen wanted to quickly escape the current situation. He had to find Jacker's true body as soon as possible. Such a dangerous fellow was still at odds with him. No matter what, he couldn't allow him to continue living. This time, it was a soldier who had nothing to do with him. It was hard to guarantee that it wouldn't be his family and friends next time. Zhouwen. Qin Wufu looked at Zhouwen with a strange expression. "Governor, please remember your responsibility. You don't have to protect me alone, but the millions of ordinary citizens behind you." Zhouwen only wanted to leave with Jacker as soon as possible. If Qin Wufu stopped him, he would become an obstacle. All he could do was accuse Qin Wufu of something so that he wouldn't have the determination to fight to the death. However, when Qin Wufu, Lu Su, and the other officers and soldiers heard this, it had a completely different meaning. Zhouwen's image immediately rose in their hearts. He was like a saint who had sacrificed himself to save the common people. Unbeknownst to them, Zhouwen wished he could stay as far away from them as possible. No one wanted to be with a bunch of bombs that could explode at any moment. "Let's go." Jacker turned around and walked towards the encampment's entrance. Zhouwen followed behind him without hesitation. Qin Wufu opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything in the end. All he did was salute Zhouwen. All the officers and soldiers saluted Zhouwen and watched him and Jacker leave the camp. Chapter 427. "I've already followed you out. Can I remove the life blast on them?" Zhouwen said to Jack after he left the encampment with him. "Put this on." Jack took out a strange chain and handed it to Zhouwen. "What's this?" Zhouwen looked at it and felt that it was like a shackle, but it was much thinner. It wasn't as simple as locking his limbs. "This is an essence trapping lock invented by the Bureau. It's made of essence gold. After wearing it, it can lock up 26 spots that might be one sea of energy. It includes almost all the possible locations of the sea of energy formed by various primordial energy art. Wearing this, even immortals can't use their primordial energy. I was locked up by this for 28 years. However, this is only a simple version. Mine is more complicated, so it's inconvenient to get it. I specially asked the Bureau for it and prepared it for you," Jack said. Zhouwen glanced at the essence trapping lock and frowned. "You're asking me to commit suicide. Of course, you can also choose to watch a fireworks banquet." Jack pointed in the direction of the encampment. "All right, I'll wear it." Zhouwen pretended to be in a difficult position, but he was sneering inwardly. This item might be useful to others, allowing them to lock up their primordial energy sea, but Zhouwen didn't have a primordial energy sea at all. If he insisted on a primordial energy sea, his entire body was a primordial energy sea. Unless his body was directly destroyed, it was impossible to destroy his primordial energy sea. This was what made the Lost Immortal Sutra different. Zhouwen wearing the essence trapping lock was no different from not wearing it. After receiving the essence trapping lock, Zhouwen put it on. He saw the chains wrap around his body like a corset. In some special spots, there were metal needles that stabbed into his body. There were a total of 26 of them, targeting 26 spots that could be primordial energy seas. Even the top experts in the Federation would no longer be able to use the power of their primordial energy if they were locked up by the essence trapping lock. Without primordial energy circulating, they couldn't use primordial energy arts or summon companion beasts. Although summoning a companion beast didn't require much primordial energy, without any primordial energy, he couldn't activate the tattoo formed by the companion beast, nor could he summon a companion beast. You are very strong, but unfortunately, you are bound by the so-called morals of the secular world. You are foolish enough to sacrifice yourself for others. This is the only aspect in which you are not strong enough, and also the only aspect that disappoints me. I originally thought that under my coercion, your true self would be stimulated and you would abandon that trash to release your true self, truly pushing your spirit and body to the extreme. I never expected you to be so thoroughly brainwashed by those foolish ethics. How disappointing. Seeing Zhou Wen put on the primordial trapping lock, Jacker wasn't happy. Instead, he revealed a disappointed expression. Isn't this what you want? Zhou Wen said coldly at Jacker. Of course not. I've said it before. I want to see the moment when your body and mind are at their peak. Only then will you be the best and most irreplaceable ingredient in the world. Unfortunately, your mind is too weak. It's so stupid that it's greatly reducing your deliciousness, Jacker said. Zhou Wen seemed to be amused as he stared at Jacker and said, You are so particular even when doing evil. Should I say that you are an artist among evildoers? Or should I say that you are a bastard? It doesn't matter. I'm me. My pursuit doesn't need anyone to understand. Jacker glanced at Zhou Wen and said, If I eat you now, it will be a waste of delicacies. However, there's no rush. I will soon push your mind to its limit. What are you trying to do? Zhou Wen's expression changed slightly. Do you feel it? Your mind is already beginning to stir. Jacker looked in the direction of the encampment and continued, Now, get rid of those foolish trash so that they can no longer be an obstacle to your mind. It will allow you to truly find yourself. Are you crazy? Zhou Wen immediately understood that Jacker still wanted to kill the people in the encampment to force and stimulate his mind. I'm only helping you find your true self. Jacker's eyes were fervent. You are a lunatic yourself, and now you want to turn me into a lunatic? Zhou Wen stared at Jacker expressionlessly. He wasn't angry, but he was trying to determine if the Jacker in front of him was an avatar or his main body. If being a lunatic can bring happiness, why not go crazy once? Jacker said indifferently as he summoned the cursed cat demon. You said that you used the cat demon's curse to plant life blast on everyone. It's actually fake, right? Zhou Wen said to him. Why do you say that? Jacker stopped and asked with interest. According to what I know, curses have all kinds of restrictions. Cursing people requires a medium, and it's even more difficult to add life blast to a curse. The conditions should be even harsher. Even the curse powers of a mythical companion beast shouldn't be so strong that it can be cursed without a medium, right? Jacker nodded and said, You're right. I really can't curse everyone. I only cursed something in the military camp. Everyone who came into contact with that thing would be passively infected with the curse and be planted with life blast. It shouldn't be that simple. It's impossible for such a passive infection curse to spread on a large scale, Zhou Wen said with certainty. Oh, then tell me, how did I infect them with the curse? Jack stopped what he was doing and asked Zhou Wen with great interest. You have detonated a soldier and an officer, so such a thing is definitely something that soldiers and officers can touch. Just touching it isn't enough. A special ritual or medium is needed to infect them with the curse. Previously, I said that they were all planted with life blast. You once let them see the cursed cat demon and made them think that they were cursed by the cursed cat demon. In fact, at that time, you had already exposed the fact that you didn't curse everyone, Zhou Wen said. Continue, Jacker said with a smile. In the military camp, there is only one thing that can meet the criteria mentioned above, and that is the signature book when you hand over your post. You put a curse on the signature book, and all the officers and soldiers who have signed their names on it have completed the ceremony, so they were cursed. You said that you didn't put a curse on me because you didn't want me to be hurt, but in fact, it was because I didn't write my name on the signature book, so you couldn't put a curse on me. You're indeed very smart. You're almost right. However, even if your name is on the signature, I won't let you be tainted by the curse, Jacker said. Chapter 428. From the looks of it, I guessed right. The current you should be your true body. I never expected you to be so bold as to enter the military camp with your true body. If you had really detonated everyone back then, I'm afraid you wouldn't have been able to escape, right? Zhou praised Jack. You even guessed that? How did you guess it? Jacker was somewhat surprised as he asked Zhou. I didn't know in the past, but I'm sure now, Zhou said. Jack was taken aback before he laughed. Interesting. You are really interesting. What a pity that a smart person like you sacrificed yourself for that trash. However, it's fortunate that this is the case. Otherwise, with your abilities and thoughts, it would have been very difficult for me to capture you. You're right. This is my true body. Even I wouldn't be able to summon a mythical companion beast if I didn't go with my true body. Naturally, I wouldn't be able to complete those means. Everyone thinks that I'm a despicable person who only knows how to hide in the dark. Everyone thinks that I won't take the risk with my true body, but I did. Furthermore, I came out unscathed. Isn't that interesting? Jack was somewhat smug. You are indeed a bold and meticulous devil. If a person like you lives in this world, I'm afraid many people won't be able to eat or sleep in peace, right? Zhou sighed. Others aren't in my consideration, but you should be happy. Although you are dead, I won't let off those who want to capture you. I'll destroy the entire bureau as revenge for you, Jack said. I've been poor since I was young, so I've developed a bad habit. I like to do my own things. I don't know how to enjoy life, nor do I enjoy the services of others. Therefore, it's best I take revenge myself, Zhou said. You're putting me in a difficult position. I'm already famished. I wish I could immediately devour a delicacy like you. I really can't wait that long, Jack said as he licked his short lips. That's why I have to kill you first, Zhou said as he stared at Jack. Unfortunately, you have already put on the primordial trapping lock. There's no chance. Jack was clearly very confident in the primordial trapping lock. After all, it was something that had locked him up for 28 years. He had tried all sorts of methods, but he had failed to escape it. Really? Zhou exerted his strength as the primordial trapping lock that bound him like a shackle instantly shattered, turning into fragments that scattered everywhere. Jack's expression changed drastically. He wanted to snap his fingers and kill all the cursed people to deal Zhou a mental blow. But just as he raised his hand, he saw a flash of light from a knife. It was incredibly fast and directly cut off his hand. The knife did not stop and continued to slash at Jacker's body. As Zhou had put on the primordial trapping lock, Jacker's mental state had dropped too low. He was just too close to Zhou, and Zhou was just too fast. There weren't many people at the epic stage faster than him. Jacker wasn't as fast as Zhou's saber. Jacker suddenly transformed into a shadow and fled, but the bamboo blade in Zhou's hand was even faster. It slashed at the black shadow. Blood splattered as a tiger-shaped companion beast was sliced into two by Zhou's saber. As for the tiger-shaped companion beast's corpse and blood, it suddenly exploded. The explosive force was much more terrifying than the full-powered strike of an epic creature. Clearly, the tiger-shaped companion beast was at the epic stage. Die! Jacker's figure fled to another spot. And in his original spot, more than 10 epic companion beasts appeared at the same time and were detonated by Jacker. Within a radius of a few hundred meters, a terrifying force exploded, forming a huge blast of light that soared into the sky. It could be seen from dozens of kilometers away. Inside the encampment, Qin Wufu and company saw the terrifying blast of light and felt the ground shake. Their expressions immediately turned ugly. Something might have happened to Zhou. Let's go take a look. Qin Wufu immediately led his men in the direction of the blast of light. That was where Zhou had been taken by Jacker. And that terrifying burst of power wasn't something that could be achieved at the epic stage. Zhou definitely couldn't produce such a powerful force, so there was only one possibility left. It was Jacker who had unleashed his strength. Lu Su also rushed in the direction of the blast of light with everyone. She was extremely sad. She still remembered that when Zhou said that he didn't want to implicate the soldiers, she thought that he was afraid of death. However, in order to protect their lives, Zhou had chosen to leave with a homicidal maniac like Jacker. His outcome was obvious. Despite knowing that hell was right in front of him, a youth who was still in school had bravely chosen to step into hell for the sake of true soldiers like them. This made Lu Su feel ashamed and touched. Zhou, don't die. This was Lu Su's prayer, as well as the thoughts of many Chess Mountain soldiers and officers. At the moment Zhou left with Jacker for them, Zhou was no longer just an ordinary name in their hearts. Jacker stared intently at the spot where the blast of light had occurred. He felt extremely conflicted. He didn't wish for Zhou to die just like that. From his point of view, it was a waste of delicacies. However, at that instant, he really felt that his life was under serious threat. He subconsciously used all his strength. Compared to delicacies, his life was more important. Jacker stared intently at the spot where the blast of light had occurred. Although more than 10 epic creatures had self-destructed at the same spot, the power was enough to kill any epic creature. Jacker was still worried. He couldn't feel at ease as long as he didn't see Zhou corpse. Boom! A figure rushed out from the explosion of light, radiating light and heat in mid-air, like a sun. He held a large sword in his hand, and he slashed down from mid-air. The sword light was like a wheel of light from the sun as it slashed down. The light was unimaginable, and it was unimaginably domineering. Is this fellow a monster? More than 10 epic companion beasts self-destructed at the same time, but they didn't kill him? Jacker was alarmed, but his eyes burned with fervor. At that moment, he no longer wished to escape. Now, the thought of eating Zhou burned even more intensely, almost devouring him. With a wave of his hand, the cursed cat demon transformed into a ring and appeared on his finger. With the ring on, Jacker didn't escape. Instead, he punched at Zhou sword beam. This was clearly not Jacker's style, but Zhou sword beam slashed forward without any hesitation. Crack! The cat demon ring on Jacker's finger and one of his arms were severed at the same time. Jacker was sent flying, but he had a crazy smile on his face. Blood curse. Life exchange. A sanguine glow rose from Jacker's body, transforming into blood-colored incantation patterns. His life soul, Blood Hex Clown, appeared on Zhou body. Immediately, Zhou body was enveloped by the sanguine light as he fell from the sky. Let's see whose life is tougher. Jacker's long hair fluttered as the blood curse rose from his body. He was about to activate his curse. Chapter 429. Just as Jacker was about to unleash the curse, a purple beam of light slashed across his back. Jacker's actions froze as his raised hand stopped in midair. A head flew into the air with a spray of blood. Not far behind Jacker, there was a little girl in purple armor who looked like a doll. She held a purple copper scabbard and stood there with a cold expression. Plop! Jacker's corpse collapsed and the ancient sword returned to the scabbard in demonic neonate's arms. However, Zhou didn't dare be careless. He stared intently at Jacker's corpse, afraid that it would turn into a doll. Thankfully, what he was worried about didn't happen. Jacker's corpse didn't turn into a doll. Instead, his mysterious phone vibrated. Zhou took out his phone and the dead man tree automatically appeared on the screen. He pointed the phone at Jacker's corpse and his corpse and blood vanished. The dissipating blood hex clown also transformed into a red stream of light that was sucked into the phone. A tender shoot appeared on the crown of the dead man tree. When Qin Wufu rushed over with his men, he only saw a huge crater that was a few hundred meters in diameter. Zhou was standing in the crater, but there was no sign of Jacker. Zhou, are you alright? Where's Jacker? Zhou Su asked Zhou in surprise. He probably no longer exists in this world, Zhou said casually as he placed his phone in his pocket. Qin Wufu, Lu Su, and the epic officers were alarmed. The meaning behind Zhou Wen's words was very obvious, but they found it unbelievable. However, the truth was right in front of them. Even Qin Wufu would find it difficult to complete such an intense battle and explosive power. In such a battle, it was naturally either one of them dying. Since Zhou Wen was able to stand here unscathed, Jacker's outcome was obvious. Looking at Zhou Wen standing in the crater, Lu Su and company were shocked. They still found it unbelievable that a notorious murderer like Jacker would be killed by a university student like Zhou Wen. Even if they didn't know how powerful Jacker was in the past, Jacker had barged into the military camp alone and killed so many soldiers and officers while chatting. Yet, he had left them helpless. They had already witnessed his ferocity. For such a ferocious person to be killed by a student like Jacker, it was indeed unacceptable. After returning to the encampment, Lu Su strongly requested to check Zhou Wen's identity, only to realize that he wasn't injured. Zhou Wen's deeds became a legend in the Chess Mountain encampment. The soldiers discussed Zhou Wen's deeds, his bravery, his strength, and his superb medical skills. In the Chess Mountain encampment, Zhou Wen had become synonymous with omnipotence. He was respected by many soldiers and officers. Even when Qin Wufu reported to Tianzhua, he had used extremely exaggerated praise. As a result, Tianzhua's expression turned rather odd when he heard his report. Overseer, it's too much of a waste for such a talent to stay on campus to study. Please let Zhou Wen stay in Chess Mountain. I hope he can become the team leader of the Special Operations Team. Qin Wufu directly expressed his request through the video call. Do you think that with his age and qualifications, those people will be convinced by him being the team leader of the Special Operations Team? And Tianzhua asked. Don't worry about this, Overseer. I've already asked for their opinions. Their opinions are unanimous. Other than Zhou Wen, they won't accept anyone else as team leader, Qin Wufu immediately said. And Tianzhua's expression turned even odder. After some thought, he said, I can't make the decision on this matter. His surname is Zhou, not An. I don't care about his matters. Besides, I'm afraid our Empress Dowager won't agree to your suggestion. Qin Wufu sighed when he heard that. That's true. Madame Lan probably won't let him take the risk, but it's too much of a waste for such a talent to stay on campus. As long as he trains for a few more years, he will definitely be able to guard a region in the future. And Xing stood by the side in all seriousness, but for some reason, Tianzhua had the feeling that he was holding back his laughter. After Qin Wufu hung up, Tianzhua turned to glare at Xing and said, What are you so happy about? Don't you know that a few of our soldiers died? Overseer, I'm not laughing, Xing said seriously. Humph, does the Bureau really think that our family is dead? They actually dared to kill family soldiers in our family's military camp. They have to pay for this, Tianzhua said coldly. Overseer, how do you want them to pay? Xing's eyes turned cold. It's time to move the nail you buried in the bureau, Tianzhua said. Yes, I know what to do, Xing's eyes lit up as he said excitedly. Then do it. Don't let them wait too long. Also, seal up the news of Zhou Wen killing Jack. Don't let the news spread to Chess Mountain, Tianzhua said. Even if it gets out, I'm afraid no one will believe that Jack was killed by young Master One, right? Xing said. Jack naturally isn't someone a student can kill, Tianzhua said. Xing immediately understood what Tianzhua meant. Overseer, don't worry. Jack's death has nothing to do with young Master One. He was killed by our family's troop. Did I say that? Tianzhua glared at him. No, Overseer has never said that. However, if others think that way, you can't stop them. After all, this matter has nothing to do with young Master One. They won't investigate him, Xing said in all seriousness. What does it have to do with me? It's good that a fellow who only knows how to cause trouble is dead, Tianzhua said with a cold snort. Then, Overseer, do you mean to let him stay in Chess Mountain or let him return to school? And Xing asked, "Don't ask me about him. Ask that person at home yourself," Etienne's was said without looking up. With Jack dead, Zhou felt much more relaxed. However, his mind didn't stop. The Bureau had actually used someone like Jack to capture him. This was no different from taking his life. Although Zhou Wen's current strength wasn't enough to fight the Bureau head-on, wouldn't it mean that he was easily bullied if he didn't do anything? Wouldn't that allow the Bureau to send more people without any qualms? No, I have to think of a way. I have to let the Bureau know the pain. Although I can't fight the Bureau head-on, I don't necessarily have to. Just like Jack, perhaps I can do something. Zhou Wen's mind raced. Zhou Wen didn't like to argue with others, much less form grudges with them. Even arguing with others was troublesome for him. However, he also had his bottom line and temper. Chapter 430. Zhou Wen's understanding of the Bureau was limited. Even if he had any ideas, he had nowhere to start. Therefore, Zhou Wen first called in Xing and asked him for the Bureau's information. "Young Master One, although Jack is very strong, he has been locked up for so many years. His strength alone is still much weaker than the Bureau's." And Xing paused before saying, "Don't worry about this matter. The Yin family will definitely not let this matter rest. They will definitely make the Bureau pay the price. We are already taking action. I just want to understand my enemy better." Zhou Wen didn't explain further. "That's right. You will have to deal with the Bureau in the future. Indeed, you should have a detailed understanding of them. How about this? Wait a moment. I'll sort out the information and print a copy for you. I'll get someone to send it to you. It's not convenient to send some information to you online," and Xing said. "All right." Zhou Wen wasn't in a hurry. He hadn't thought of what to do. "Did you really kill Jacker?" And Xing asked curiously because Jacker's corpse wasn't found at the scene. There wasn't even a trace of blood. "I don't know how to put it. In theory, he should be dead," Zhou Wen said. "Does that mean there's still a chance of survival?" And Xing asked. "There's no need to worry about Jacker," Zhou Wen said with certainty. The reason he didn't say that Jack was dead and only said that he had vanished from this world was because the companion eggs born from the dead man tree were different from ordinary companion eggs. They seemed to carry something from when they were alive and could be seen as their avatars. Zhou Wen was still looking forward to the companion beast that Jack had transformed into. If he could have abilities like Life Blast, it would be of great help to Zhou Wen in future battles. Although he could use spatial trajectories to achieve an effect similar to Life Blast, it was much less practical and not as flexible as Life Blast. Furthermore, Jacker was proficient in Shadow Escape and many curses. The only thing Zhou Wen wasn't sure about was how many skills Jacker could retain after transforming into a companion beast. DD. The sound of a message came from the phone. Zhou Wen took out his phone and saw that it was a message from the Dharch. "I need these things. Buy them for me." The content of the message was a very long list. Zhou Wen took a look and realized that they were tools, instruments, and materials used in chemistry. "What do you want these things for?" Zhou Wen found it odd. He remembered that he hadn't introduced the Dharch to any dramas related to chemistry. Master's answer was very simple. "Study chemistry?" Zhou Wen was alarmed as he thought for a moment and asked, "Have you watched the television dramas I introduced you to? It's too fake. It's boring. The fake things you humans have are useless. Only chemistry and some technological things are interesting. Quickly buy them for me. I want to see those things before sunset tomorrow." The Dharch sent a message. "That's impossible. Many of the things you want need to be bought in big cities. Small cities don't have them at all. If you go to a big city, you might not be able to come back even after 10 days or half a month." Zhou Wen was telling the truth. In typical small cities, it was possible to buy a test cup or something, but it was impossible to buy those instruments. The Dharch seemed to understand a lot about the Federation from the internet. She probably knew that Zhou Wen wasn't lying. After a moment of silence, she sent another message. I want you to enter Chess Mountain once and take something from inside. The Dharch, you know how weak I am. Aren't you trying to kill me by getting me to enter Chess Mountain? Zhou immediately sent a message to reject her. As long as you do as I say, nothing will happen. If you don't go, I'll make a wish to sever all your limbs, the Dharch said. What do you want me to do? Zhou frowned slightly. If the Dharch wanted him to enter and break the seal, there would be a huge problem. Get a treasure from inside. With that treasure, you can directly pass things to me through that treasure in the future. There's no need to run around anymore. It can save you a lot of time, the Dharch said. There's actually such a treasure? What is it? Zhou was very tempted when he heard that. From the current situation, the Dharch did need him to do something. There was no reason for her to harm him now. If he could enter Chess Mountain to take a look at the situation inside, it would be helpful for him to clear the Chess Mountain dungeon in the future. Furthermore, there were treasures to take. The Dharch said, It's nothing special. It's just a flower. However, that flower grows in Chess Mountain. You have to enter the belly of the mountain to bring the flower out. I can't help you take it out. Is there really no danger? Zhou was still somewhat hesitant. Chess Mountain is indeed filled with danger, but as long as you do as I say, there won't be any danger unless you have a death wish and don't listen to my orders. The Dharch paused and said, You don't have the right to choose. Appear in front of Chess Mountain in an hour. Otherwise, I got it. Sever all my limbs, right? Zhou added. Although he was somewhat unwilling, Zhou still had to go. He had seen the Thearka's strength. Her wish ability was too terrifying. Even Truth Listener's evil nullification couldn't resolve it. He really had no choice but to go. It's indeed wrong to take risk. I won't go to unfamiliar dimensional zones in the future no matter what. Zhou packed his things and rushed to Chess Mountain. When he saw the flower again, the Dharch didn't say anything to him. She saw a crack in the mountain wall where the flower was rooted. Could probably allow a person to squeeze in sideways. Go in. The Thearka's voice sounded from the flower. Zhou gritted his teeth and crawled into the crack. He walked in sideways. The crack was narrow, so Zhou could only slowly move in sideways. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Soon, he couldn't even see his fingers. Thankfully, Zhou had Truth Listener. He could roughly know the situation nearby, so he didn't find it terrifying. After walking for a while, the crack finally widened. Zhou realized that there was a huge space in the mountain's belly in front of him. Zhou was in the middle of the mountain's belly. And at the bottom of the mountain's belly was a huge, strange building. Zhou had also seen many ancient architectural drawings, but this was the first time he had seen such a building. The building had floors that resembled stairs, but it was extremely huge. Each floor was about the same size as a square. Only at the top was an ancient building. There was a 7-colored treasure light that shot into the sky from the ancient building, illuminating the entire mountain's belly. Chapter 431. 7-colored treasure light surged into the sky from the ancient building, but under the foundation, blood-like liquid seeped out. The underground river flowed through the foundation and brought the blood-like liquid out, immediately turning it into a blood-colored river. Now, Zhou finally knew why the river outside had turned blood-colored. It was because of this strange building. After carefully sizing up the blood seeping out of the building's foundation, Zhou's expression changed slightly. The bottom of the foundation was actually made up of countless skeletons and withered bones. It was as though countless skeletons had been poured into cement. Just looking at it made his scalp tingle. Climb down the mountain wall. Remember, don't leave the mountain wall. Don't fly. You have to have your feet on the ground. The Thearka's voice sounded, but this time, it wasn't a real voice. Instead, it sounded in Zhou's mind. Don't tell me the flower you mentioned is in that ancient building? Zhou tried whispering. The Dharch indeed heard him. That's right. After you reach the bottom of the mountain wall, swim down the river. Remember not to take the stairs in front. Swim from the left. There's a hole there. You have to enter from there. Don't tell me there are any strange creatures in the river? Zhou looked at the blood-colored river below the ancient building and felt uneasy. Of course. You haven't used that bone flute, right? When you enter the water, use your teeth to bite the bone flute and swim forward. No matter what you see or feel, don't panic or speak. Just follow the path I point out and swim forward. What else do I need to take note of? Can you finish it all at once? Zhou said gloomily. There's nothing else. You can go down now, the Dharch said straightforwardly. Zhou took out the bone flute and bit it with his teeth. Then, he climbed down with his hands and feet. Outside, although the river was blood-colored, it was only the color. There wasn't the smell of blood. However, it was different here. The more Zhou climbed down, the stronger the smell of blood became. It was unbearable. When he reached the bottom, the smell of blood almost made him want to vomit. Looking at the river that looked like real blood and the blood-seeping skeleton foundation in the distance, Zhou gritted his teeth and jumped into the water. His poison resistance was high enough, and he had been injected with Dr. Darkness's venom several times. He wasn't afraid of the poison in the river. Even so, Zhou felt his skin itch after entering the water. Although he had already put on the mutated stone chi armor, there were still some gaps in the armor. It couldn't stop the blood-like river water from seeping in. Thankfully, apart from feeling a little itchy, there was no other reaction. Zhou felt a lot more at ease as he sped up and swam towards the left side of the building. As he swam, Zhou suddenly felt that something was floating up from beneath the blood-colored river. Furthermore, it was approaching him. It was a massive object. Its entire body seemed to be trembling with some kind of power. Truth listener could hear its existence, but it was affected by the tremors. It couldn't hear its exact appearance, but it felt that it was very, very big. Don't stop. Don't speak. Continue swimming. Don't panic unless you want to die. The Thearcha's voice sounded in his mind again. At this point in time, Zhou could only continue swimming forward. However, he kept pricking up his ears to listen. He felt that the thing underwater had already reached below him. The thing was unimaginably huge. It was probably 100 meters long, but he didn't know what it was. Darn flower, don't harm me, Zhou thought to himself. He felt that the thing was about to touch his body. Furthermore, there were many things that looked like seaweed or tentacles that had already touched his body. Don't stop. Continue swimming. Ignore it. The Thearcha's voice sounded again. Zhou could only listen to her and continue swimming forward. However, he soon realized that many red things had drilled out of the water beside him. They were as thick as a pinky. They looked like seaweed or tentacles that drilled out of the water, occupying nearly 100 meters of the river. When Zhou's body touched those things, he felt soft and sticky. He had no idea what they were. Continue swimming. Ignore them. It's fine even if you touch them. The Thearcha's voice sounded in Zhou's mind again. Zhou felt his entire body itch. He knew that it was definitely not fine as the Dharch had said. At the very least, these things were definitely poisonous. It was fortunate that his poison resistance was high enough. If it were anyone else, their corpse would have long sunk to the bottom of the river. He bit the bone flute and swam with all his might through the red objects. This was no longer swimming. It was as though he was crawling on the red objects. Thankfully, apart from feeling itchy, the things didn't attack him. Zhou crawled all the way to the left side of the ancient building's base. After crawling for a few hundred meters, he didn't see the hole the Dharch had mentioned. We're here. It's here. About 3 meters underwater. Dive down from here, the Dharch suddenly said. Damn it. Even if I have to sever all my limbs, I'll definitely not come again. Zhou gritted his teeth and pushed away the red things that resembled seaweed. He crawled into the blood, and the smell of blood made him have the urge to vomit. The red objects constantly trembled, severely affecting truth listeners' hearing. Zhou crawled down the red seaweed, and after searching for a while, he finally found the hole the Tharch had mentioned. The hole was about the size of a dog hole. Zhou's head could barely fit in. After barely squeezing in, there was a passageway behind him that was flooded by the river. Thankfully, there were no red seaweed-like things inside. Truth listener could roughly hear the situation inside. Don't surface for now. Swim underwater according to my instructions. Now you have to be careful. You have to stick close to the stone slab at the bottom. If those things outside discover you, you're dead. F***ku. Zhou had the urge to curse. However, at this point in time, he had no other choice. All he could do was carefully swim forward while sticking close to the stone slab at the bottom. The passageway below led in all directions. Zhou followed the Tharch's instructions and swam forward. At the same time, he remembered the path he had taken so that he could come again. He definitely wouldn't come again in person, but in-game, he still had to continue exploring this place. Thankfully, Zhou had learned the Nine Dragons art. The amount of time he could hold his breath underwater was much longer than the average epic. If it were an ordinary epic human, ignoring the poison in the water, they probably wouldn't be able to help but surface to take a breather after swimming underwater for such a long time. Alright, there's a stone staircase ahead. I'll go up the stone staircase. After swimming for quite a while, he passed through many submerged passageways. Just as Zhou was about to suffocate, he finally heard the Tharch's voice telling him to leave the water. Zhou rushed out of the water along the stone steps and panted heavily. However, as he panted, he couldn't help but hold his breath when he saw the scene in front of him. At the end of the stone steps was a stone platform. On the stone platform was a small mountain of dimensional crystals that emitted a rainbow-colored glow. Chapter 432. He didn't use his phone to take a picture, but just from the terrifying fluctuations emitted by the crystals, he knew that they were definitely extraordinary. Circle around the treasure platform and walk to the back. The Tharch's voice sounded in his mind again. Can I take some of the crystals here back? If I need to buy anything in the future, I won't have to ask you for money again, Zhou asked as he swallowed his saliva. Even he couldn't help but feel his heart race when faced with the mountainous pile of high-level crystals. If you don't want your life, go ahead and take it. If you want your life, stay away from them. Don't touch them, the Tharch said. Petty, Zhou muttered. He circled around the mountainous pile of crystals and walked to the back of the pile. He discovered a strange creature lying on the pile of crystals. It was curled up as though it was sleeping. The creature was golden in color and looked like a pangolin, but it seemed somewhat different. What dimensional creature is that? Zhou asked as he looked at the pangolin lying on the pile of crystals. Since the Tharch didn't warn him to be careful, it was unlikely that there was any danger. In the words of you humans, it's a mythical creature. It's known as a guardian of wealth. It can devour any creature that is greedy for wealth, the Tharch said. Mythical creature. Why didn't you say so earlier? Zhou's expression changed slightly as he lowered his voice. As long as you don't touch those crystals greedily, it won't wake up. Why mention it? The Tharch said matter-of-factly. Zhou was secretly alarmed. If he hadn't listened to the Tharch and had greedily taken the crystals, he would have been in trouble. Behind the treasure platform was a stone staircase. Zhou walked down the stone stairs and came to a hall. He saw many strange beast-shaped stone sculptures in the hall. The stone sculptures were simple and imposing, but there was nothing special about them. However, in their mouths were egg-shaped objects of different colors and sizes. Those are companion eggs? Zhou looked at the 2 rows of stone sculptures on both sides of the hall. Each stone sculpture had a companion egg in its mouth. That's right. In the words of you humans, those are mythical companion eggs, the Tharch said. Mythical companion eggs? What kind of place is this? Why are there so many treasures? Zhou asked in surprise. There were at least more than 10 stone statues, and the mythical companion eggs in their mouths were terrifying. Haven't you been to school? Haven't you learned the history of the East District? The Dharch said disdainfully. What does this have to do with whether I've studied history? Zhou asked. Since you have studied history, you should be able to recognize Deer Terrace Pavilion when you see it. This is a unique building in the world, the Dharch said. Deer Terrace Pavilion. Is it the famous Deer Terrace Pavilion that the tyrant expended the country's resources and oppressed the people? Zhouwen's history was very bad. He had only read it for exams, but he had also heard of Deer Terrace Pavilion because it was just too famous. Back then, the tyrant had used the entire country's resources to build Deer Terrace Pavilion and hid countless rare treasures in it. He ate, drank, and had fun there, enjoying the riches of the mortal world. It made Zhou somewhat envious. That's right. This is the legendary Deer Terrace Pavilion of you humans. However, the purpose of Deer Terrace Pavilion isn't as simple as storing treasures as you humans say. Then what's it used for? Zhou asked. The Dharch said with a strange laugh. You should have seen the movies about Deer Terrace Pavilion, right? There's a scene where the Demoness invites immortals to descend to the mortal world and drink with the tyrant, right? I've seen it, but those aren't immortals. They are all demons that the Demoness invited, Zhou said after some thought. Although that plot isn't very believable, it's a little related. The purpose of Deer Terrace Pavilion is related to dimensional creatures. It can also be considered a demon invitation, the Dharch said indifferently. Can these companion eggs be taken away? Zhou asked as he stared at the companion eggs. These were all mythical companion eggs. Any one of them could be sold for an astronomical price. Even if he didn't sell them, he could use them himself. What do you think? The Dharch asked. Forget it if you can't take it, Zhou said helplessly. Then why aren't you leaving? There's a pot of flowers in the right corner of the hall. That's what you want to take, the Dharch urged. Zhou searched according to the location the Dharch had mentioned and indeed saw a pot of flowers in the corner. It looked very inconspicuous. It was a gray clay pot with a flower planted inside. It lazily grew 2 leaves and a flower. The flower looked like a morning glory. It drooped listlessly as though it was malnourished and about to wither. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you moving it away? The Dharch urged again. Zhou had no choice but to move the flower pot. He wasn't in a good mood. He had seen so many high-level crystals and mythical companion beasts, but he could only move this flower out. The Dharch, it wasn't easy coming here. Do you think there's anything else for me to take out? I don't want to make another trip, Zhou asked, unwilling to give up. Everything in Deer Terrace Pavilion is guarded by dimensional creatures. If you have the ability, go ahead and take it. You can take as much as you want. I won't stop you, the Dharch said disdainfully. Upon hearing that, Zhou dispelled the thought of taking anything else. As he walked back with the flower pot, he asked, What's the use of this flower? Don't underestimate it. This void flower has the ability to teleport. In the future, when you buy something, as long as you put the item into the flower, you can teleport it to me. It's just a fixed-point teleportation device. Zhou was immediately disappointed. You don't have to be disappointed. In the future, if I have anything to give you, I can also teleport it to you. It's much more convenient than your human phones. It's probably about the same as the quantum teleportation device that you humans are researching, the Dharch said after some thought. Zhou forced a smile. He could only hope that he could obtain something good from the Dharch in the future. Otherwise, his trip would have been for nothing. Apart from a flower pot, he wouldn't have gained anything. Zhou sized up his surroundings indignantly. When he saw the portrait of a demonic 9-tailed fox carved on the wall in front of the hall, he couldn't help but size it up and say, Is this the true form of the legendary Demoness? That's right. If I were you, I wouldn't continue looking at her, the Dharch said coldly. Why? Just as Zhou asked, he felt his lost immortal sutra react. The circulation speed began to slow down. Almost at the same time, Zhou saw an evil glint appear in the nine-tailed fox's eyes. Chapter 433. Why aren't you closing your eyes? Do you want to become a demon by looking at the demon god catalog as a human? The Dharch shouted coldly. However, Zhou didn't retract his gaze because of the Thearcha's reprimand. He continued staring at the nine-tailed fox symbol on the stone wall. The lost immortal sutra in his body automatically circulated like before. This feeling was all too familiar to Zhou. It was the same feeling when he learned the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra and other essence energy arts. As Zhou watched, the nine-tailed fox statue changed into a strange black tiger. Not long after, it transformed into a winged ox. Then, Zhou saw the stone statues on the stone wall constantly change. Many creature statues that Zhou had never heard of appeared. Stop looking. It doesn't matter if you have a death wish, but who will buy my things? The Dharch was extremely anxious. Although she could also talk to others online, it wasn't easy to trick them into coming to Chess Mountain. Probably no one would dare to come. Even if someone dared to come, there would be troops stationed outside. Outsiders wouldn't be able to approach Chess Mountain. Taking a step back, even if one could approach Chess Mountain, it wouldn't be easy to find someone who could enter Chess Mountain without dying. After the Dharch went online, she realized that humans were much weaker than she had imagined. Someone like Zhou was already considered a top-notch combat force among humans. Zhou ignored the Dharch and kept staring at the stone wall. There were thousands of demon beast symbols on the stone wall. Zhou only felt that the demon beasts had their own charms and temperaments, but he couldn't see anything special about them. However, the lost Immortal Sutra's circulation became slower and slower. When Zhou couldn't remember how many demon beast stone statues he had seen, the lost Immortal Sutra finally stopped circulating. In the next second, the lost Immortal Sutra circulated crazily. However, the path and mode were completely different from before. It was a brand new essence energy art. This essence energy art was extremely demonic, giving Zhou a strange feeling. When he circulated the essence energy art, his flesh and blood trembled as though they were letting out a dragon's roar. His tendons and bones sounded like the roars of tigers and wolves. His hair stood up like a hedgehog, making him look like a dandelion. Impossible. How can a human gain basic mastery of the demon god catalog? That's impossible. In the cave, the Dharch widened her beautiful eyes in surprise as though she had seen something extremely unbelievable. As Zhou circulated the new primordial energy art, he also obtained some information in his mind, letting him know that this primordial energy art was called the Demon God Bloodline Catalog. However, Zhou had only mastered the primordial energy art. He was still far from condensing a life providence. That's strange. You cultivated the Demon God Catalog, so why didn't you turn into a demon? Are you not human to begin with? After Zhou retracted his gaze, he heard the Thearcha's voice sound in his mind. I'm just casually looking around. Don't tell me I'll turn into a monster just like that? He hadn't really mastered the Demon God Bloodline Catalog. It was all simulated by the Lost Immortal Sutra, so he naturally didn't have the danger the Dharch mentioned. The Dharch didn't say anything else as she urged Zhou to leave Deer Terrace Pavilion quickly. Zhou stored the flower pot into the chaos bead before following the path he had taken. All the way out of Chess Mountain, he only heaved a sigh of relief when he emerged from the rift. Go back first. Buy the things I need as soon as possible and teleport them to me through that void flower, the Dharch exhorted. After Zhou returned to his dorm, he heaved a sigh of relief. He decided not to risk his life in unknown dimensional zones again. What method should I think of to deal with the Thearcha's wish? Otherwise, it'll be really troublesome if I keep being requested by her to do this and that. After some thought, Zhou couldn't think of a good solution. In the next few days, Zhou went to a nearby city to buy some common chemicals and equipment. He then attempted to use the Void Flower to teleport them to her. The Void Flower was really useful. As long as he told the Morning Glory flower to bloom, its flower would form a small spatial portal. All he needed to do was throw the item inside. The Dharch was temporarily appeased, but she still urged Zhou to head to a big city as soon as possible to buy everything she needed. Although Zhou agreed verbally, he wasn't in a hurry to return to school. He stayed in the military camp for a few more days. After infecting the soldiers with rashes, he injected them with poison, allowing them to have antibodies. They no longer feared the blood river and their combat strength increased greatly. Now, the officers and soldiers would call Zhou Dr. Zhou when they saw him. They didn't even need to use the word little. Clearly, they were very respectful to him. However, Zhou wasn't used to it. He clearly didn't know any medical skills, so he felt odd every time the soldiers called him Dr. Zhou. The people in Xing had sent finally arrived. They brought with them information from the bureau. Many of them were confidential documents, and Xing repeatedly exhorted Zhou to destroy them immediately after reading them. He couldn't let anyone else see them. Zhou carefully studied the thick stack of documents. There was a detailed description of the bureau. It was broken down to every department and every position. It was very clear. After reading it, Zhou realized that the authority of the bureau was really huge. It was almost the same as the cotton uniform guards in ancient times. However, the information also mentioned many of the achievements of the bureau. Many devils that had harmed a region had been captured by the bureau. There had been many sacrifices. When the bureau was first established, it was to target the unbridled devils, as well as the Federation officials and local wealthy families who had done all sorts of evil deeds in secret. However, with the change of times, the authority increased, but there were no restrictions. The bureau gradually changed. Now, the bureau had a total of 15 branches. They were stationed in 15 important cities in the Federation and were in charge of intelligence investigations and supervision in the nearby areas. There were a total of 15 branch ministers like Qiao Xiyuan. All of them were epic experts. Furthermore, they had their own strength. They weren't something ordinary epic experts could compare with. That wasn't all. The headquarters of the bureau was filled with experts. There was no need to talk about Shin-Yuqi. Although no one had seen him take action, the people who wanted to harm him had all disappeared from this world. At present, no one had heard of anyone who could touch him. Back when Jacker killed the son of the former bureau's director general, it nearly drove the former director general crazy. He went on a large scale to capture Jacker, but due to his extreme anger, he made a few irrational decisions, nearly crippling the bureau. Shin-Yuqi had been ordered to capture Jacker in the face of danger and re-establish the authority of the bureau. At the same time, he had gathered a large number of talents. People like Qiao Xiyuan were fresh blood that Shin-Yuqi had dug out from the bottom. Apart from Shin-Yuqi, the bureau also had 4 censors. Each of them was an extremely terrifying figure. There were also some other epic experts. After careful study, Zhou realized that it was definitely not an easy task for him to touch the bureau. As for some small skirmishes, it didn't affect the bureau at all, nor would it hurt them. Chapter 434. Zhou felt that as a man, there was no need to waste time on trivial matters. However, once he decided to do something, he had to be ruthless. He had to kill his enemy the moment he attacked. If he couldn't kill him, he had to make him feel pain and fear. From Zhou point of view, cursing, saying some harsh words, or smashing something to slap someone was meaningless. Even if he captured 2 people from the bureau and killed them, even if they were branch ministers, it wasn't a big deal to the bureau. They could just replace someone else as the branch minister. Zhouwen didn't have the strength to storm into the bureau's lair and destroy it. An arrogant person like Jack had been imprisoned by the bureau for 28 years. After he was released, he didn't immediately seek revenge on the bureau. Instead, he followed orders to capture Zhouwen. This showed how terrifying the bureau was. Zhouwen studied it for a long time before a piece of news caught his attention. The bureau had great authority, but it was different from the typical wealthy families or families. They were only a functional department of the Federation and received a salary from the Federation. Although it was easy for a department like the Bureau to earn money, Shin Yuchi strictly forbade his subordinates from extorting money. He hadn't heard of any misdeeds in this regard. In this aspect, Zhouwen was rather impressed by Shin Yuchi. To be able to control such a department to such an extent wasn't something that anyone could do. However, relying on the Federation's funding was clearly insufficient for the Bureau's operations. There were two main sources of income for the Bureau. One was the sponsorship of the various consortiums, and the other was a primordial crystal mine. According to the information Anxing had given him, more than 60% of the Bureau's income came from this primordial crystal mine. Zhouwen wasn't unfamiliar with primordial crystal mines. There were quite a number of them in the Bat Cave. As he couldn't take them out, Zhouwen hadn't paid much attention to them. The main reason he went to the Bat Cave was to hunt poison bat. However, the dungeons hadn't been refreshed recently. The poison bats inside had long been killed by Zhouwen, so he hadn't gone to the Bat Cave again. However, after reading the information on the primordial crystal mine, Zhouwen made a pleasant discovery. The effects of primordial crystals were similar to primordial gold. They could be used to create primordial crystal weapons, and they could even be used to create laser beams. Such laser beams were lethal to dimensional creatures. The value of primordial crystals was higher than primordial gold, but the reserves of primordial crystals were typically not as high as primordial gold. The few primordial crystal mines that had been discovered only produced a few tons a year. Zhouwen estimated that the annual production of a primordial crystal mine was about the same as the primordial crystals in the Bat Cave. The Bureau's primordial crystal mine was a rich mine. It had been mined for several years, but the amount of primordial crystals it produced was still very stable. It would probably be fine to mine for another decade or two. As the primordial crystal mine was tightly protected, there was only a little information. There was no specific information on the production or reserves, but it was definitely a lot. Every time the Bureau needed money, they would use a large number of primordial crystals. What truly interested Zhouwen was for primordial Zhou. That he won for him 2222224 for 4. That for 222222224 for him. Without any hesitation, he took out his phone and switched to the Zhuolu Instance dungeon. Soon, he arrived at the Poison Bat Cave. Looking at the star-like primordial crystal mine in the cave, Zhouwen summoned Tyrant Behemoth. When the 3 to 4 meter tall Tyrant Behemoth saw the primordial crystal ores, its eyes lit up. It let out a roar and charged forward. It grabbed the rock wall and bit down. Zhouwen was dumbfounded as he watched Tyrant Behemoth chew the rocks and primordial crystal ores like candy. However, Tyrant Behemoth had no intention of stopping. One bite after another, it chewed and swallowed the nearby primordial crystal ores. It even chewed and swallowed many rocks. It really wasn't picky at all. This fellow is indeed a monster that can eat 1,000 mountains daily in the future. Zhouwen couldn't help but marvel. Although they were both mythical creatures, Banana Fairy and Truth Listener's appetite was much worse than it. As for demonic neonate, she had never eaten anything since she was born. Tyrant Behemoth was like a drilling machine. Wherever it gnawed, a layer of the rock wall was bitten off. During this period of time, Tyrant Behemoth was indeed starving. As there were no dungeons to grind, in order to conserve food, Zhouwen waited until it was extremely hungry before giving it some food. During this period of time, Tyrant Behemoth wasn't even half full, much less full. This time, with food, how could it give up? It ate crazily the entire way. In half a day, it finished all the primordial crystal ores in the bat cave. Its stomach was bloated like a huge ball. This fellow. I really can't afford to raise it in the future. If it wasn't for the game dungeons and the primordial crystals in the bat cave, Zhou would have had the urge to strangle Tyrant Behemoth to death. He wanted to kill it before it became a gluttonous prodigal to prevent it from bringing disaster to the world. Suddenly, Zhou saw the stuffed Tyrant Behemoth burp. Then, black light emitted from its body, completely enveloping its body. Is it about to evolve to the epic stage? Zhou was immediately overjoyed. If he had known that the primordial crystal ores were so useful to Tyrant Behemoth, Zhou would have brought it here long ago. It was a waste to grind the bat caves so many times in the past. After advancing to the epic stage, Tyrant Behemoth should be able to eat more, right? Zhou's eyes flashed with excitement when he thought of the Bureau's primordial crystal mine. Tyrant Behemoth kept evolving. Zhou didn't know when it would complete its evolution, but the bat cave in-game was rather safe, so he left it here. Zhou continued studying the Bureau's information, especially the parts regarding the primordial crystal mine. The primordial crystal mine wasn't in Holy City or the capital. Instead, it was in a dimensional zone in the wilderness. However, the dimensional zone had already been sealed by the Bureau. There was also one of the 4 sensors, Kai-Jin, guarding it. It wasn't easy to enter the dimensional zone to find the primordial crystal mine. After Zhou studied it, he realized that there were many people who had designs on the primordial crystal mine, but none of them succeeded. The main reason was that the dimensional zone itself was very strange. It was the Bureau's greatest reliance. Ordinary people would die for no reason if they entered the dimensional zone. According to the information, Sheng and company had definitely sent people there, but the outcome wasn't good. Many people were sent in, but only 2 came out alive. Not long after the 2 of them came out, problems occurred. One went crazy and the other committed suicide. Now, the only information the family had was brought out by the 2 of them. After Zhou read the information, he revealed a look of delight. That place was indeed strange, but he might be able to give it a try. Chapter 435. Zhou had carefully studied the information Sheng had given him and believed that the power there was likely a curse power. Truth Listener had a very strong restraining power against curses. However, I still need to verify the exact situation before I know. It's best if I can find the tiny palm symbol and download the dimensional zone into my phone. Zhou didn't plan on heading to the primordial crystal mine immediately. Tyrant Behemoth was still incubating, so it was useless even if he went now. It was impossible for him to mine by himself. Even if he went in now, it wouldn't be of much use. He wouldn't be able to take away too many primordial crystals. According to usual practice, Zhou first went to the underground sea. At that moment, there were more than 10 palm prints on the black dragon's body. Apart from those palm prints, other parts of its body had begun to develop poisonous boils that were festering. After Zhou entered the sea, the other 8 black dragons attacked him, but the black dragon was in a daze as though it was in a half-asleep state. It was on the verge of losing consciousness. From the looks of it, it should be soon. Zhou was delighted as he looked forward to what the black dragon would drop after its death. After escaping the underground sea, Zhou didn't immediately leave the game. He observed the sapphire-like sky for a while, but he didn't discover anything inside. He had once approached it before dying. There should be a terrifying creature in the sapphire-like sky, but he hadn't discovered its existence. Just as Zhou was about to exit the game, he suddenly saw a blue light flash in the distant sapphire sky. It was like an electrocardiogram signal that flashed across the sapphire sky. The blue light came suddenly and disappeared quickly. Zhou saw the blue light flash, but after waiting for a while, he didn't see the blue light appear again. I wonder what it is. It should be a mythical creature, right? Zhou knew that it was useless even if he knew what it was. With his current strength, killing a chained black dragon was already so difficult. He had no chance against an unrestrained mythical creature. He looked at the evolving tyrant behemoth in the bat cave. It was still evolving, and he didn't know when it would succeed. After exiting the game, Zhou received a call from Enxing. "Young Master One, I have good news to tell you. Our plan against the Bureau is about to bear fruit," Enxing said. Zhou was naturally very happy to hear that the Bureau was about to be in trouble. However, he wanted to personally send them to hell. "Ah Xing, Jack is already dead. I want to leave Chess Mountain," Zhou said. "Of course. The Bureau probably doesn't have the time to deal with you for the time being. I'll get someone to send you back to school tomorrow," Enxing said. "There's no need. I'll go back myself. Before that, I still want to return to my hometown," Zhou said. "That's fine. Even Jack isn't your match. It's not easy to find someone who can protect you now. It's up to you." Enxing paused before asking, "Why are you returning to Virtue? You don't have any relatives there, do you?" "There are some things at home that I wish to take back. By the way, can you get a pass to guide Ancient City? I wish to take a look when I return," Zhou said. "That's easy. Just go there directly. I'll make a call and make arrangements," Enxing said straightforwardly. After hanging up, Zhou packed his things and told Qin Wufu that he was leaving. Not only did he want to return to the manor, but he also wanted to head to the Bureau's primordial crystal mine. The reason Zhou wanted to go to Guide City first was because he wanted to see the Fire God platform in reality and the stone saber in the stone furnace. In-game, the stone saber was just a phantom that couldn't be touched, so he wanted to take a look on the way. "Are you really leaving? If you're willing, you can stay here. I'll make you the team leader of the Special Operations Team and be in charge of those fellows. I'll explain things to the overseer." Qin Wufu wanted Zhou to stay. He felt that it was a waste for Zhou to return to school. "Overseer, I'm still a student after all. I should focus on my studies," Zhou said. "That's good too. There are indeed a few impressive existences in Sunset College, especially Chancellor Ling. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he's the #1 person below the mythical stage. It will be beneficial for you to learn more from him," Qin Wufu said. Zhou nodded slightly. "Then I'll be leaving now." "That fast?" Qin Wufu was slightly astonished. "There's no point in staying another night." "I still have something to do," Zhou said. "All right, but you have to bid farewell to those fellows. Otherwise, they will definitely eat me up," Qin Wufu said with a smile. After leaving Chess Mountain, Zhou rode the mutated stone chi in the direction of Guide City. Back when he left Guide City, he was only at the mortal stage. Now, in less than a year, he had advanced to the epic stage. He was very different from before. When he came to guide Ancient City again, Zhou recalled the combat test he had participated in with Li Xian. It felt like it had happened a long time ago. After entering the Ancient City, he saw scattered people fighting the skeleton soldiers. Zhou circled around them and headed deeper into the Ancient City. Although he had only been here once in real life, he had grinded it countless times in-game. Zhou was extremely familiar with Guide Ancient City, so he easily arrived in front of the Fire God platform. The firebirds on the Fire God platform naturally couldn't injure Zhou. He walked up the stairs and the firebirds that filled the sky attacked. All Zhou did was circulate the ancient Sovereign Sutra, and the firebirds automatically flew back. When he arrived at the top of the Fire God platform, it wasn't much different from in-game. The layout was the same, but it was cartoonish in-game. It looked cuter, but in reality, it was even more ancient. There were flames burning in the mottled stone furnace. Indeed, there was a stone saber stuck in the flames. It looked a little rougher than in-game, probably the kind that was made by hand. There were potholes and natural stone patterns on the saber's blade. Only the edge of the blade was relatively finely ground, making it look very sharp. It was likely a stone saber that was half man-made. Zhou circulated the ancient sovereign sutra and summoned the ancient sovereign life soul. He attached it to him before reaching his hand into the stone furnace. The flames in the stone furnace seemed to sense something and automatically parted. It didn't burn Zhou palm, revealing the stone saber inside. Zhou held the stone saber and immediately felt the coarse texture unique to stone. It was a little cold to the touch, but it was firm. I grabbed it. The stone saber in real life really exists? Zhou was alarmed. Chapter 436. At the instant he held the stone saber, Zhou immediately felt an ancient aura emit from it. It left him slightly shocked as he involuntarily tightened his grip on the saber's hilt. With a gentle tug, he pulled out the stone saber slightly. Zhou immediately felt the entire guide ancient city tremble. Flames spewed out from the stone furnace as though countless living beings were roaring inside. Zhou's expression changed slightly as he immediately pressed the stone saber back. Only then did the terrifying feeling vanish. This stone saber, could it be like the jade box on Chess Mountain, an item that seals dimensional zones? Zhou released the stone saber and didn't dare touch it again. Although he didn't know what the consequences of pulling out the stone saber would be, Zhou chose not to touch it. After getting off the fire god platform, Zhou realized that something was amiss. Guide Ancient City had the most skeleton soldiers, with skeleton generals in the minority. But now, Zhou saw more than 10 skeleton generals nearby. He hadn't seen them when he arrived. Clearly, they had just appeared. Pulling out the stone saber really does have some effect. Zhou continued walking out and realized that there were indeed many skeleton generals. It was already impressive to encounter 1 or 2 skeleton generals in the ancient city, but now Zhou had seen more than 50 along the way. He had no idea how many he hadn't seen. The appearance of so many skeleton generals made the garrison very happy. Usually, there were only a few skeleton soldiers to kill. Now that there were suddenly so many skeleton generals, the drop rate had also increased significantly. Naturally, they were very excited. Zhou was somewhat worried. Based on the present situation, the situation might be worse than he imagined if the dimensional zone's seal was really removed. After returning to his room and staying the night, Zhou set off for the Bureau's primordial crystal mine early the next morning. The dimensional zone where the primordial crystal mine was located was named Don't Cry Valley. Legend had it that it was originally an extremely beautiful valley. A young couple lived in the valley. The woman grew vegetables and flowers in the valley while the man went hunting in the mountains. They lived a life of immortal companionship. However, there was one time when the man went hunting in the mountains and never returned. The woman waited bitterly for the man to return, but he didn't. After that, the villagers in the vicinity heard the sound of crying coming from the valley at night, almost never stopping. Some villagers mustered up their courage and entered the valley during the day. They found that the woman had been dead for a long time. Her body had dried up, and there was a knife in her abdomen. It looked like she had committed suicide. The villagers buried the woman's body and changed the name of the valley to Don't Cry Valley, hoping that the woman could rest in peace and stop crying. However, the sound of the woman's sobs could still be heard every night. Of course, these were only legends. There were no cries in Don't Cry Valley, but ever since the dimensional storms, there had been cries in Don't Cry Valley, but it wasn't from that woman. Everyone who entered the Don't Cry Valley would cry uncontrollably. They would not be able to control their tears. If they went too deep, they would die in tears. The Bureau had clearly grasped the secret of Don't Cry Valley, so they could come and go freely in Don't Cry Valley without being affected by the mysterious power. However, the other factions had sent many people to probe the secret of Don't Cry Valley and snatch the primordial crystal mine inside, but they returned empty-handed. Many people had even died. This included the Yin family. The Yin family only learned of the tears in Don't Cry Valley after the two survivors returned. Zhou suspected that the power that made people cry was similar to a curse, and Truth Listener had a good restraining effect on curses. Therefore, Zhou planned on coming to Don't Cry Valley to give it a try. If he could really restrain the power of Don't Cry Valley, he would have a high chance of entering the primordial crystal mine. Of course, Zhou didn't take the risk of entering. Firstly, it was because Tyrant Behemoth hadn't completed its evolution. Secondly, he still wanted to find the tiny palm symbol outside. If he could find it, he could give it a try in-game. That way, he would be more confident. In Luoyang's and family, Tianzhua frowned at Sheng and said, "What do you mean by losing contact with that punk? When he went to guide Ancient City, he still contacted me. However, there was no news of him after that. It's been 4 days now, but there's no news of him. He hasn't returned to Luoyang, nor is he in Guide City. There's no news of him at Chess Mountain either," Sheng said. "Then where is he?" Tianzhua asked. Sheng pondered for a moment before saying, "Overseer, I think he might have gone to the bureau." "Nonsense. What can he do in the bureau? Don't tell me he really thinks he has the ability to become enemies with the bureau just because he killed Jack?" Tianzhua slammed the teacup on the table. Sheng said with a bitter smile, "Young Master One looks gentle and doesn't seem to care about anything, but deep down, he's as stubborn as you, Overseer. The bureau has repeatedly bullied him, so young Master One definitely won't let it go. He previously asked me for the bureau's information, so he must have gone to find trouble with the bureau." "Nonsense. He's arrogant and does whatever he wants just because he has some achievement. He doesn't know his place. Does he think he's invincible just because he killed Jack?" Tianzhua said angrily. "Overseer, I don't think young Master One is a rash person. I believe he definitely has his own ideas. Perhaps he can really do something," Sheng said. "What can he do? Not to mention Shin Yuqi, even I have to be wary of him. However, none of the 4 censors under him are weaker than Jack. They are extremely difficult to deal with. It's fine if he only wants to vent his anger and kill a few lackeys, but if he really dares to head to the bureau's headquarters, he will definitely die." Tianzhua paused for a moment before saying, "If he really wants to kill a few lackeys to vent his anger, then he's a stupid pig. Doing such a thing won't help him at all. It will only make the bureau target him even more. Young Master One isn't a bloodthirsty person, so he naturally won't kill people to vent his anger." Sheng mumbled inwardly, "It seems you are the one who likes to kill, right? Humph. Who knows what kind of nonsense he will do. Go and bring him back for me," Tianzhua said. "Overseer, didn't you say that you wouldn't care about him?" Sheng asked. "Of course I don't care about him. It's good that he's dead. I'm just afraid that if he's captured by the bureau, wouldn't that cause a huge ruckus?" Tianzhua glared at Sheng and said, "Go immediately. No matter what method you use, you have to bring him back." "Yes, I'll go to the capital now," Sheng replied. Chapter 437. Shin Yuqi had been in a bad mood recently. Recently, an inspector in the bureau had betrayed him and stolen many secret files. The secret files recorded some of the bureau's actions, and these actions were aimed at some members of the 6 families. The exposure of these secret files immediately made the bureau a target. The bureau was originally the guard dog of the 6 families. Now that it wanted to bite its master, the outcome was obvious. Shin Yuqi was already in a terrible fix. The only thing to be thankful for was that the inspector's rank wasn't high enough. The files he had stolen were only a small portion, and they didn't touch on the important core. Although the files only investigated some of the outer members of the 6 families, Shin Yuqi was still held accountable and forced to explain to the 6 families. For this, the bureau had paid quite a huge price. Originally, the Cape family, which Liz was from, would provide a huge sum of money to the bureau every year. In fact, the 6 families provided the same amount of money to the Bureau. However, just as it was time to transfer the money this year, the 6 families' funding was cancelled at the same time. Although the excuse was different, Shin Yuchi knew very well that this was just a small warning from the 6 families. Not only that, some of the inspectors from the Bureau who had investigated the 6 families had also encountered some problems. Although no lives had been lost, Shin Yuchi knew that if such a thing happened again, it wouldn't be so simple. Untienzwa, your revenge sure came quickly. Shin Yuchi had already guessed who had done all of this. Apart from Untienzwa, he couldn't think of a second person. Even Jack failed. This family is really getting more and more troublesome. Just as Shin Yuchi was thinking about what to do next, he heard a knock on the door. Director General, Northern Ice City has already agreed to our deal. This is the price list they offered. The secretary handed a document to Shin Yuchi. Shin Yuchi carefully looked at the price list and asked with a frown, "Why is it 30% more expensive than what we agreed on previously?" Northern Ice City said that the Aurora pith produced by their side is decreasing, so they have to increase the price. This is the lowest price they can accept, the secretary said helplessly. What do you mean decreasing? It's because they know that we urgently need the Aurora pith and are demanding an exorbitant price. Shin Yuchi snorted coldly, feeling somewhat helpless. He had to obtain the Aurora pith. This was a necessity for the advancement of the mythical companion beast. No matter how expensive it was, he had to obtain it. After the companion beast advanced, it would be the most powerful trump card in the Bureau's hands. This was a major matter that couldn't be delayed. However, the Bureau's current financial situation was just too bad. It had originally been counting on the aid from the 6 families, but now that the aid was gone, it would be difficult for the Bureau to operate normally, much less purchase the priceless Aurora pith. From the looks, I can only use the primordial crystals in storage. Shin Yuchi could only come up with this idea. The amount of reserves in the Special Inspector Bureau's primordial crystal mine exceeded everyone's imagination. Even Shin Yuchi hadn't expected the reserves to be so large when he first started mining. However, Shin Yuchi was not in a hurry to exchange the crystal ores for money. Every year, he only took out a few tons of crystal ores to sell, and a large amount of crystal ores were still stored in the warehouse under the mine. If all the primordial crystal mines there were taken out, the Bureau wouldn't have to worry about funds for decades to come. Of course, Shin Yuchi definitely wouldn't let anyone know that the Bureau had such a huge sum of wealth. Even the 6 families only believed that the primordial crystal mine was an ordinary rich mine. Continue negotiating with Northern Ice City and try to lower the price, Shin Yuchi said to his secretary. Although he had money, he absolutely could not waste it. Those crystals would be of great use in the future. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Shin Yuchi did not want to use a single cent. Yes, Chief. The secretary answered and left. Shin Yuchi picked up the intelligence report from Luoyang and couldn't help but frown. Even Jack can't bring Zhou Wen back from the infamily. Who else is more suitable? Shin Yuchi was momentarily unable to think of a good candidate. It was more difficult to get someone from Luoyang's uncrowned king, the infamily, than he had imagined. He had thought that Jacker would be able to handle this matter, but in the end, he failed. Let's think about it carefully. Shin Yuchi had no intention of giving up. Although Jacker had failed, Wang Mingyuan's matter was of great importance. The 6 families had given him a death order to investigate it thoroughly no matter what. Even if he was willing to give up, the 6 families wouldn't. Zhou Wen sprawled on the top of a small mountain and used binoculars to observe the valley not far away. That valley was the legendary Don't Cry Valley. From the outside, the valley entrance wasn't very big. It looked like 3 to 4 trucks could pass through it side by side. There were checkpoints built there and there were people patrolling it. However, these weren't crucial. Those patrolling were only ordinary inspectors at the legendary stage. It wasn't difficult for them to rush into Don't Cry Valley. In fact, many people had rushed in before, but not many of them came out alive. The Bureau clearly didn't focus their defense on the outside. The primordial crystal mine was likely the core of their defense. One of the 4 sensors, Kai-Jin, would likely be there. Zhou wasn't too familiar with Kai-Jin, but in the information Xing had given him, this person had been mentioned in detail. He didn't stand out and was the most low-key of the 4 sensors. There was very little information about him. All he knew was that he was good at using the saber. However, for Shin Yuqi to hand such an important primordial crystal mine to him, it was obvious that this person wasn't simple. From time to time, drones would fly past. All Zhou could do was hide in the dark and continue observing the situation in Don't Cry Valley. It's still too far away. I can't see if there's a tiny palm symbol there. I have to get closer. Zhou thought for a moment and summoned Truth Listener. He hid in the grass on the mountain peak and got it to take a look. Truth Listener was only the size of a finger. It was relatively small, making it difficult for ordinary people to see it. Ordinary radars couldn't detect its existence either. Truth Listener ran quickly through the grass and forest. Soon, it approached the entrance of Don't Cry Valley. Zhou's order was for it to search for the tiny palm symbol. Truth Listener didn't approach the checkpoint. Under the cover of the grass, it circled the entrance of the valley, but it didn't discover anything. If I can't find the tiny figure, I'll have to go in and give it a try myself. Just as Zhou was thinking about how he could enter, his phone vibrated. He took it out and realized that a notification had popped up in-game. Killed mythical creature, True Blood Demon Dragon. Discovered dimensional crystal. Chapter 438. True Blood Demon Dragon? What's that? Zhou was first taken aback for a second before he reacted. He was immediately overjoyed as he hurriedly took out his phone and entered the Zhuolu battlefield dungeon. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to run towards the underground sea. Could the crystal dropped by that black dragon have been swallowed by the other black dragons? Zhou was somewhat worried, but he realized that it was a game and not real life. The black dragons probably didn't have such high intelligence. He ran to the underground sea and plunged into it. Soon, he saw 8 black dragons pulling a carriage over. One of them was gone. I wonder where that black dragon died? Zhou felt a slight headache, but it was probably nearby. Now, Zhou didn't dare let the blood-colored avatar die. If it died, there wouldn't be any drop. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to turn around and run, luring the 8 black dragons out of the water. Then, he led them in a huge circle and led them to a spot relatively close to the coast. Only then did he use teleportation to shake them off and circle back to his previous spot. Zhou returned to the spot where he had encountered the 8 dragons. Without much effort, he saw a treasure glow at the bottom of the sea. Zhou dived over and saw a pearl that resembled a dragon pearl land in the sand at the bottom of the sea. There was a black dragon's shadow swimming in the pearl. It was a primordial energy skill crystal. After Zhou obtained the primordial energy skill crystal, he didn't have time to take a closer look. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to leave the underground sea to prevent the 8 dragons from chasing after him. Now that he didn't have the ability to teleport, it wouldn't be easy to shake off the 8 dragons if he were to be entangled by them. After returning to the Bat Cave, Zhou carefully sized up the True Blood Demon Dragon's primordial energy skill crystal. True Blood Demon Dragon Crystal. Mythical requirements. Strength 41, Poison 21, Life Providence that strengthens Constitution, Life Soul that strengthens Constitution. I already have 41 strength. Although I don't know why I need the poison stat, my poison stat has reached the standard. I wonder if the ancient Sovereign Sutra counts as a constitution strengthening Life Providence and Life Soul? Zhou found a hidden cave and prepared to give it a try. He switched his essence energy art to the Ancient Sovereign Sutra and fused the Defy Ancient Sovereign Life Soul with him. When Zhou attempted to absorb the True Blood Demon Dragon Crystal again, the dragon pearl-like crystal immediately lit up. Wisps of black gas seeped out of the crystal and seeped into the blood-colored avatar's body. Zhou immediately felt a terrifying force surge and roar in his body as though it was about to explode. Soon, Zhou realized that something was amiss. His muscles were expanding and his bones were growing. He grew a head taller in a short period of time, reaching about 2 meters tall. There were scales on his body, but they weren't black. Under the light of the ancient king body, the scales looked like blood crystals. Zhou felt his entire body ache as though 2 holes had been pierced through his head. His spine was in excruciating pain as though a blade was slicing through his flesh. Zhou endured the pain until the crystal's energy completely melted into his body. Only then did he feel much better. However, when he used his phone's selfie function to take a look at himself, he realized that his body was like a humanoid dragon beast. Apart from not having a dragon tail, he had dragon horns on his head, dragon fins on his back, and scales all over his body. He didn't look like a human at all. He hurriedly stopped the primordial energy skill he had just comprehended. Then, Zhou felt his body deflate like a balloon as he shrank to his original size. The dragon scales and dragon horns on his body also vanished. Only then did Zhou heave a sigh of relief. He hurriedly looked at the information in-game and saw a notification pop up. Absorbed True Blood Demon Dragon Crystal. Attained Mythical Essence Energy Skill Demon Dragon True Body. Although it's a Mythical Essence Energy skill, this image is a little odd. Zhou attempted to use Demon Dragon True Body again, and realized that this Mythical Essence Energy skill could only be used when he used the Defy Ancient Sovereign Life Soul. He couldn't transform when he used other Essence Energy art. After activating Demon Dragon True Body, Zhou looked at himself on the phone's camera and couldn't recognize himself. In the sun-like brilliance stood a blood-red dragon. As the brilliance was too strong, he could only vaguely see the blood-colored dragon's figure. It looked odd no matter how he looked at it. Demon Dragon True Body only lasted for about 10 seconds before Zhou felt his essence energy drain and automatically returned to his human form. The Ancient Sovereign Sutra doesn't have the ability to provide unlimited essence energy. This Demon Dragon True Body can only last for about 10 seconds. I wonder how powerful it is. Zhou didn't dare try it in reality, so he returned to the game. He first grinded some essence energy crystals to replenish his essence energy before heading to the underground sea. As Zhou had already restarted the game dungeon while grinding for essence energy crystals, there were 9 black dragons again when he arrived at the underground sea. Seeing the 9 black dragons roar as they charged at him, Zhou activated Demon Dragon True Body. He was like a humanoid dragon beast that emitted a terrifying glow as he charged at the 9 black dragons. In nearly 10 seconds, Zhou felt like he had become Superman. His physical strength and speed were able to clash head-on with the black dragons without being at a disadvantage. He was like a humanoid dragon beast. However, 10 seconds later, Zhou was reduced to his original form. Not long after, he was killed by the 9 black dragons. What a pity! If I could use the Demon Dragon True Body in the Slaughterer state, I would be able to storm into the Bureau now and smash up the Bureau's headquarters, removing this department from existence. Zhou felt extremely regretful. However, 10 seconds was enough for Zhou to do many things. However, during these 10 seconds, Zhou couldn't use other essence energy skills. If his essence energy was expended by essence energy skills, the Demon Dragon True Body would automatically stop. He wouldn't even be able to last 10 seconds. It's not that I can't use Demon Dragon True Body for a long period of time. I can grind for some essence energy crystals in-game. After the Demon Dragon True Body ends, I'll find a place to absorb the essence energy crystals. However, in that case, I'll still need some time as a buffer. Zhou was very satisfied with the demon dragon true body. The strength and speed of a mythical creature weren't fake. Even without using any essence energy skills, he could easily kill an epic creature with his strength and speed. It's time to make that arrogant flower pay the price. Zhou excitedly opened Chess Mountain's instance dungeon, prepared to teach the flower a lesson and find her weakness. He wouldn't have to suffer her anger in the future. As Tyrant Behemoth hadn't evolved successfully, Zhou could only hide in the cave and wait for it to complete its evolution before heading to Don't Cry Valley. Apart from gaming, Zhou had nothing else to do. Chapter 439. The blood-colored avatar came in front of Chess Mountain's mountain wall. Zhou had nothing to be afraid of in-game. He straightened his back and summoned the Overlord sword in hand. He slashed out with the demonic astral wheel as the blood-red wheel of light immediately tore through the sword and slashed at the flower on the mountain wall. A petal of the flower fell silently. When the demonic astral wheel struck the petal, it immediately shattered. Just as Zhou was about to see what tricks the flower had up its sleeve, he suddenly saw the blood-colored avatar fall to the ground. The game screen turned black. Zhou felt his body turn cold. Thankfully, he hadn't had too much of a conflict with the Dharch. Otherwise, his corpse would have rotted by now. How did I die just now? I only saw a petal fall before I died, Zhou thought to himself. Clearly, the flower's power of wishes and curses weren't of the same system, but they could still kill. It's clearly the same as killing. Why isn't the power of wishes restrained by the evil nullification life soul? Zhou was somewhat depressed. Dripping his blood to revive, he once again arrived in front of Chess Mountain's mountain wall. Zhou took out all sorts of martial arts and used all the techniques he had learned. He even used all sorts of companion beasts, but the outcome was the same. As long as the flower dropped a petal, the blood-colored avatar would immediately die. There was no chance of survival. Zhou had also tried to get demonic neonate to release the ancient sword from afar to slash at the flower, but before the ancient sword could reach it, the petals had already fallen. The blood-colored avatar fell to the ground again before the game ended. What crappy flower is this? How can I live? After Zhou died again, he had the urge to smash his phone. No matter how strong the other dimensional creatures were, he could at least see some possibilities. He couldn't kill them now because he didn't have enough strength. When he had enough strength in the future, he would naturally have a chance to kill them. However, he couldn't see any possibility with this flower. If a petal fell, it would die regardless of whether it was a god or a ghost. Zhou calmed himself down and began considering the flower's problem. The flower in-game clearly doesn't have any intelligence, nor does it know how to communicate with others. It's just a flower without any consciousness. Only when I attack it will it automatically react and drop a petal. This is completely different from the Dharch I met in reality. Is it the difference between the game and reality, or is there another reason? Zhou had a nagging feeling that the Dharch wasn't as simple as a flower. Perhaps this flower was just a tool the Dharch used to send a voice transmission. The real Dharch was likely someone else, but Zhou didn't know who she was. After entering the game again, Zhou didn't attack the flower this time. He attempted to ignore it and climbed up the mountain wall. The outcome was somewhat unexpected. Zhou didn't attack the flower, nor did the flower attack him. It continued growing quietly on the mountain wall like an ordinary wildflower. Zhou already had the experience of climbing Chess Mountain once. It was the same in-game. A very powerful force pulled at his body, making it very difficult for him to crawl. It wasn't easy for him to climb to the top of Chess Mountain. Just like in reality, there was a stone staircase that led to the center of the mountain. There was a huge boulder in the shape of a bun. In the middle of the boulder was a snow-white jade box. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to touch the jade box, but he missed. His palm passed through the jade box as though it was just a phantom and not something that really existed. As expected, this jade box is the same as the stone saber. It's an item that suppresses dimensional zones. I can't touch it in-game, so I can only take it in reality. Although Zhou was greedy, once the dimensional zone was unsealed, too many people would die. He wouldn't take it no matter what. When he descended the mountain, Zhou saw the flower on the mountain wall and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Previously, when the Dharch got me to enter Chess Mountain, she didn't pass through the mountain entrance. Instead, she passed through a crack at the flower's root. Could it be that this flower is actually the key to entering Chess Mountain? Is this a secret passageway? But how can I get the flower to help me open the passageway into Chess Mountain? I wonder if begging it will work? Zhou thought to himself as he gave it a try. After all, it didn't take much effort to beg. Flower, oh flower, can you help me open the path to Chess Mountain? Zhou said to the flower. However, the flower didn't react at all. It looked like it had no intention of bothering with him. Can't I? Zhou thought of the way he used the void flower. Thinking that both of them were flowers, they might have something in common. Therefore, he shouted at the flower. In the language the Dharch had taught him, the actual meaning was, "Open!" Boom! Rumble! With the fall of a petal, the entire Chess Mountain trembled. The mountain cracked open from the flower's root. It really opened. It actually works. Then wouldn't I have died so many times for nothing? Zhou was somewhat depressed. However, when he thought of the mountain of high-level crystals and the dozen or so mythical companion eggs in Chess Mountain, Zhou didn't hold it against them. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to rush in. Everything was the same as when the Dharch had brought him here. Soon, he arrived at the mountain belly where Deer Terrace Pavilion was. Zhou followed his previous method and climbed down the mountain wall. Then, he jumped into the river and swam in the direction of Deer Terrace Pavilion. After swimming for a while, he felt a huge object approaching the blood-colored avatar from beneath the river. Zhou was already experienced, so he ignored it. However, soon, the red tentacles or water plants wrapped around the blood-colored avatar and instantly pulled it into the river. Before Zhou could do anything, the game screen went black. Holy sh*t, what's going on? Zhou was depressed. He had done everything according to the previous method, but the bone flute wasn't in the game. He naturally couldn't get the blood-colored avatar to bite the bone flute and enter the river. This was probably the problem. Since the old method doesn't work, I can only barge in. Unable to get the bone flute into the game, Zhou had no choice but to give up on taking the old path. Summoning the stone armor, he held the Overlord sword in hand and the Truth Listener earring in place. With the banana fan in his other hand, he rode on the white shadow of poison and flew towards Deer Terrace Pavilion. Before he approached Deer Terrace Pavilion, he saw a black gas rise from the ancient building, condensing into the image of a black nine-tailed fox. It coiled above the ancient building, its 9 tails formed from black gas swaying as its pair of bewitching fox eyes stared at the blood-colored avatar. Chapter 440. 2 beams shot out from the fox demon's eyes as it arrived in front of the blood-colored avatar in the blink of an eye. It was unbelievably fast, giving Zhou no time to react. Zhou subconsciously used ghost steps and almost dodged to the side. However, the white shadow of poison didn't react that quickly. After being illuminated by the beam, it disintegrated and vanished. What terrifying power! Zhou was alarmed as he saw the fox demon's eyes constantly shoot out beams of light at the blood-colored avatar. Zhou was best at movement techniques, but under such a fast gaze, he found it difficult to dodge a few times. With no other choice, he could only draw his sword and slash at the fox demon's gaze. However, the beam didn't seem corporeal. Overlord Sword's sword beam pierced through it as the beam shone on Zhou and Overlord Sword. Zhou only saw Overlord's sword and the blood-colored avatar disintegrate into points of light before the game screen went black. The fox demon's gaze is probably about to reach the speed of light. How can I dodge it? Zhou felt somewhat helpless. In front of absolute speed, no matter how good his movement techniques were, it was difficult for him to dodge. From the looks of it, this path won't work either. I can't walk in the river, and I have to pass through the fox demon in the air. I can't afford to provoke either of them. Zhou realized that he couldn't enter Deer Terrace Pavilion. Is there any way to enter? Zhou suddenly thought of the stone wall he had seen in Deer Terrace Pavilion. He had simulated an essence energy art known as the Demon God Bloodline Catalog. He didn't know if it was useful. After dripping his blood to revive, he entered Chess Mountain again. This time, Zhou didn't take many weapons. After all, it was useless to take them, so he didn't take anything. All he did was switch his essence energy art to the Demon God Bloodline Catalog that he had just gained basic mastery without a life providence. After completing it, Zhou hesitated for a moment before choosing to jump into the river. After all, this was a path he had taken before. If he took another path, he didn't know what problems would arise. If the Demon God Bloodline Catalog was really useful, he could directly reach the place where the mythical companion egg was. Just like the last time, the blood-colored avatar didn't swim far before strange blood-colored tentacles appeared at the bottom of the river. However, this time, the blood-colored tentacles didn't pull him into the water. They only danced in the water like swaying water plants. The Demon God Bloodline Catalog is actually useful? Zhou was delighted as he separated his tentacles and continued swimming forward. Soon, he arrived at the side of Deer Terrace Pavilion. Something unexpected happened. Zhou searched the left side of Deer Terrace Pavilion for a long time, but he didn't find the hole he had previously entered. No way. There's no hole in-game? Zhou searched a few more times to confirm that there was no mistake. There really wasn't a hole. Helpless, Zhou could only swim to the front of Deer Terrace Pavilion and climb up the stone steps that resembled a heavenly staircase. The base of Deer Terrace Pavilion had a total of 3 levels, arranged like a pyramid. Further up was the ancient building, which also had 3 levels. Previously, Zhou had swum underwater. According to his estimations, he was likely at the bottom of the pedestal. If they walked up the stone steps, there was no door on the 3rd floor of the base. They could only walk up the steps and directly reach the gate of the ancient building. He controlled the blood-colored avatar and carefully walked up the steps with a perturbed heart. Although he had the Demon God Bloodline Catalog to protect him, he had only gained basic mastery over it. He hadn't even condensed a life providence. When Zhou walked to the bottom of the pedestal platform, he suddenly saw an immortal fog spewing out from the platform. It transformed into many fairies and immortals as they cast their gazes at the blood-colored avatar. Zhou's heart skipped a beat. He saw that these fairies and immortals were rather beautiful, but they had an indescribable seductive charm to them. He thought of the legend where the demoness had summoned some demons that could transform and disguise themselves as immortals to drink with the tyrant. Although they were only demons, they were still legendary figures. Perhaps they had the strength of a mythical stage. The fairies and immortals looked at the blood-colored avatar, and after sizing him up a few times, they stopped looking at him. All of them held alcohol flasks and cups as they drank. There were even fairies who danced as they drank, but their dance moves were all vulgar and gaudy. This Demon God Bloodline Catalog is actually so useful. Doesn't that mean that I can enter and exit dimensional zones at will in the future without worrying about being attacked? Zhou thought to himself, but he didn't stop as he continued walking up the steps. When he arrived at the 2nd level's pedestal platform, he saw many fairies and immortals. These fairies and immortals were similar to the ones on each level. They only sized up the blood-colored avatar for a moment before ignoring him. Zhouwen walked all the way up to the third level's platform, which was also the level where the ancient building was. He saw some fairies and immortals, but the outcome was the same. No one paid him any attention. Zhouwen controlled the blood-colored avatar to walk towards the ancient building's door. The door was open, and when he looked inside, he saw 6 fairies and immortals drinking and having fun inside. However, they were different from the fairies and immortals outside. They sat on both sides of the hall, and in front of each of them was a short table. Not only was there wine on the table, but there were also all sorts of fruits and delicacies. Just as the blood-colored avatar walked into the hall, a fairy sitting near the door looked at him. With just a glance, her expression changed as she raised her hand and shot out a rainbow-colored beam of light. "No good, I've been discovered." Zhouwen retreated in a flash, but the rainbow-colored beam of light pursued him relentlessly as though it had a life of its own. It drew an arc in the air and chased after him like a rainbow. Zhouwen continuously changed his movement techniques and dodged a few times, but the rainbow-colored beam of light still caught up to him. Helpless, he had no choice but to draw his sword and slash at the rainbow-colored beam of light. Bam! The Overlord's sword struck the rainbow-colored beam of light ruthlessly, shattering it. However, the blood-colored avatar's body was sent flying as it rolled down the stone steps. As such, the concealment from before lost its effect. The fairies and immortals on the platform pounced at the blood-colored avatar ferociously. Seeing that he had been exposed, Zhouwen didn't hide any further. He switched back to the Lost Immortal Sutra, took out the banana fan, and fanned at the fairies and immortals who were charging at him. Bam! The sky was filled with immortals as they were sent flying by the fan. They either slammed into the wall or fell to the ground. All of them vomited blood and looked to be seriously injured. Some of them even revealed their true forms. Most of them were foxes, night owls, and chickens. So these fellows aren't at the mythical stage. Zhouwen was relieved as he continuously fanned the fake fairies and immortals with the banana fan in his hand. He sent them flying everywhere, and some even slammed into Deer Terrace Pavilion to their deaths. Chapter 441. Killed Epic Creature, Ancient Tomb Demon Fox. Discovered Dimensional Crystal. Killed Epic Creature, Three-Eyed Cat Demon. Discovered Dimensional Crystal. Killed Epic Creature, Ancient Tomb Demon Fox, with the banana fan combined with Slaughterer's infinite essence energy. His large-scale lethality was almost invincible among those at the same level. With a few flaps, many fake fairies and immortals were killed by him. When Zhouwen saw the dimensional crystals that they dropped, he was about to pick them up when he saw a rainbow beam fly over from above. It was the fairy sitting at the bottom of the hall. Zhouwen sent a grand wind at the fairy. With a wave of her hand, a rainbow beam of light met the grand wind and diverted it to the side. Zhouwen immediately knew that the fairy was probably at the mythical stage. Although the grand wind was powerful, it wasn't at the mythical stage yet. It would definitely be at a disadvantage against a mythical creature. Zhouwen immediately turned around and ran down the stairs. The fairy chased after him as colorful light bloomed from her hands, transforming into rainbow beams that enveloped the blood-colored avatar like thousands of rays of light. The colorful rays of light seemed to have a life of their own. No matter how Zhouwen dodged, they would chase after him. Zhouwen saw the colorful light coming from all directions and had no room to dodge. He gritted his teeth and switched to the ancient sovereign sutra. At the same time, he used the demon dragon true body and used his powerful physique to withstand the rainbow light that filled the sky. Bam! When the rainbow light landed on Zhouwen's body, it made him feel as though he had been struck by a hammer. However, the rainbow light failed to tear through the blood-colored avatar's scales. Instead, it shattered. What a powerful demon dragon true body! Zhouwen was overjoyed as he pounced at the fairy like a beast. The fairy's body changed, leaving behind afterimages. At the same time, her hands constantly released rainbow light. Although the demon dragon true body wasn't afraid of the rainbow light, it was repelled every time, unable to approach her. Seeing that time was ticking away, Zhou turned around and ran down with the demon dragon true body, running out of time. The fairy chased after him and constantly attacked him. However, after Zhou left the third level and returned to the second level of the foundation, she didn't chase after him. Instead, she returned to the ancient building. The fake fairy on the second level charged forward. Although Zhou demon dragon true body was gone and he no longer had any essence energy, he wasn't afraid of them. He switched back to Slaughterer and his essence energy immediately recovered to full. The Overlord's sword worked together with Transcendent Flying Immortal to kill the fairies and immortals that charged forward. Zhou realized that no matter how he killed on the second level, the dimensional creatures in the palace didn't come out again. I can't enter the palace, but it's not a bad idea to grind these epic creatures. Zhou summoned the baby tiger and killed all the fairies and immortals on the first and second levels. Some dimensional crystals dropped, including an essence energy skill crystal. Zhou didn't head up to the third level. However, he couldn't even deal with one demoness in the hall. There were 5 more there, so it was useless even if he went up now. Could the Dharch be one of the 6 demonesses in the hall? Zhou thought to himself. Zhou hid in the cave and constantly grinded. Although the fairies disguised as fairies and immortals on Deer Terrace Pavilion weren't very capable, the dimensional crystals they dropped were pretty good. High-level dimensional crystals often dropped, so Zhou took this opportunity to raise his various stat. Tyrant Behemoth has successfully evolved and advanced to the epic stage. After grinding for 2 days, Zhou suddenly saw a notification pop up in-game. He couldn't help but be delighted. It's finally here. Zhou hurriedly opened the companion beast column. Among the epic companion beasts, there was indeed Tyrant Behemoth's name. He summoned Tyrant Behemoth in-game and saw a black monster that was as majestic as a mountain appear on the game screen. He couldn't tell how big it was in-game, but when compared to the blood-colored avatar, he realized that the blood-colored avatar was only the size of its palm. This fellow was like a small mountain. I wonder how much this fellow will eat in the future. Can I really afford to raise it? Zhou worried inwardly. Looking at Tyrant Behemoth's stats, Zhou immediately threw his worries to the back of his mind. Tyrant Behemoth. Epic, evolvable, life providence, immense strength life soul, violent crown strength, 41 speed, 41 constitution, 41 essence energy, 41 talent skill, mountain devouring companion form, boxing glove finally at the epic stage. It's time to begin. Zhou switched off his phone and came out of the cave. Taking advantage of the night, he sneaked towards Don't Cry Valley. Unfortunately, Jacker's companion egg hadn't grown yet. Otherwise, he would have been able to use Jacker's shadow escape ability to silently enter Don't Cry Valley. Now, Zhou had no choice but to barge in. Thankfully, the Bureau didn't focus its defense here. It wasn't difficult to barge in. The mysterious power that made people cry in Don't Cry Valley was the best defensive barrier. Zhou put on the mutated stone chi armor and wrapped his entire body in it. Without revealing his face, he switched to the Godfiend Life Providence and rushed towards the checkpoint. When the people from the Bureau saw a figure rush over, they didn't have time to react. They saw the figure flash through the checkpoint and disappear into Don't Cry Valley. They almost thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. Did something rush in just now? One of the inspectors looked at the other and asked with uncertainty. I think so. I didn't see it clearly either. The other inspector wasn't too sure either. Then should we report it? Let's take a look at the surveillance footage first. The two of them pulled out the surveillance footage and slowed it down several times. Only then did they see a person in stone armor rush into Don't Cry Valley. Quick, report to the overseer. The two hurriedly sent someone into Don't Cry Valley to report to Kai Jin. After Zhou rushed into the valley, the truth listener earring on his ear immediately heated up. At the same time, a surge of essence energy surged into his body from his eyes. Instead of being alarmed, he was delighted. This meant that the truth listener earring was working. Don't Cry Valley wasn't considered a dangerous place for him. He sized up his surroundings before flying in one direction. As no one had reached the primordial crystal mine alive, Zhou didn't know its exact location. All he could do was search the valley. There were bamboo forests everywhere in the huge valley. After the wind blew through the bamboo forest, there was a rustling sound that sounded extremely strange. Although it didn't look big from the outside, after it became a dimensional zone, the space inside the valley was huge. In the endless bamboo forest, Zhou quickly ran as he searched for the possible location of the primordial crystal mine. The deeper he went into the valley, the more primordial energy he felt surging into his eyes. Clearly, the mysterious power was gradually strengthening. However, to the truth listener earring, the mysterious power became beneficial. It allowed Zhou to replenish his primordial energy when he used other primordial energy arts. Chapter 442. There were disturbances in Don't Cry Valley, so all kinds of equipment couldn't work normally. Zhou wasn't worried about cameras, but he still had to pay attention to companion beasts. Some people liked to use bugs, mosquitoes, and other companion beasts for reconnaissance. They were harder to guard against than electronic equipment because very few people could notice them. Furthermore, they were especially useful in dimensional zones. Zhou kept using the truth listener earring to pay attention to every movement in the vicinity to ensure that he could immediately discover any dimensional creatures that appeared. Suddenly, Zhou sensed the existence of a dimensional creature. It was a green bamboo leaf snake. It was lying on a bamboo joint, and its color was the same as the bamboo leaf. It was difficult for ordinary people to discover its existence. However, the truth listener earring had discovered its existence from afar. Zhou didn't know if the bamboo leaf snake was a dimensional creature that originally existed in Don't Cry Valley or if someone had placed it here. Regardless of which it was, Zhou had no intention of alarming it. He circled to the other side and continued heading deeper into the bamboo forest at a distance that it couldn't discover. Along the way, Zhou discovered quite a number of dimensional creatures. He circled around them without alarming any of them. He vaguely felt that he was heading in the right direction. As he walked forward, more and more dimensional creatures appeared. There were bamboo leaf snakes, praying mantises that resembled withered leaves, and frogs that hid in fallen leaves. These companion beasts were clearly not very powerful, but their distribution was very regular. It made it difficult for people to avoid their line of sight no matter which direction they took. In order to circle around the dimensional creatures, Zhou wasted quite a bit of time on the way. After he passed through the bamboo forest, he saw a building that resembled a bunker in front of the mountain wall. The building was obviously man-made. It was obvious that it was the entrance to the primordial crystal mine. However, there was only one door. There weren't even any windows. It was completely sealed. If he wanted to rush in, he would have to blast open the door and clash with the people from the bureau. This was the economic lifeline of the bureau. It was guarded by one of the four censors, Kai Jin. According to Ensheng, Kai Jin's strength wasn't weaker than Jack. Furthermore, with the help of other epic experts and their geographical advantage, Zhou didn't think it was a good idea to forcefully barge in. After observing the surrounding terrain, Zhou sneaked to the other side of the valley. He found a depression in the valley and summoned Tyrant Behemoth. The epic Tyrant Behemoth was more than 10 meters tall, like a black mountain. If one looked at it in reality, it would feel even more majestic and terrifying. It felt like a punch could even penetrate a mountain. Tyrant, can you make a slanted hole that leads in that direction? Be careful not to make too much noise. Zhou pointed in the direction of the mine entrance. Tyrant Behemoth could even devour extremely hard essence crystal ores. These ordinary rocks shouldn't be a problem for it. Tyrant Behemoth took action after hearing the order. It lowered its head and lay on the ground. The two horns on its head spun like a huge drill bit as it drilled through the rocks and soil, creating a huge hole. When Zhou saw the soil splatter out, he hurriedly crawled in behind Tyrant Behemoth. Tyrant Behemoth was like a super excavator. It violently drilled through the rocks and constantly advanced underground. However, as there was no place for the excavated gravel and soil, and the tunnel that was opened up was blocked, there was only a space slightly larger than Tyrant Behemoth's. The spot Zhou chose was more than 1,000 meters from the entrance of the Void Crystal Mine. He was originally worried that Tyrant Behemoth would take too long to drill through, but he had clearly underestimated Tyrant Behemoth's strength. This was a fellow known for eating 1,000 mountains a day. Although it hadn't advanced to the mythical stage and couldn't eat a mountain, it wasn't difficult for it to drill a hole in a mountain. After following Tyrant Behemoth underground for more than an hour, Zhou estimated that he was almost at the bottom of the mine, but he didn't see any essence crystal ores appear. Strange, why haven't I seen any essence crystal ores? Logically speaking, if there's a mine here, I should be able to see essence crystal ores nearby. Why isn't there anything? Zhou found it odd. Crack. Just as he was thinking, he heard the sound of rocks cracking above him. Looking down, he saw a few cracks on the top of the tunnel that Tyrant Behemoth had opened up. Faint light seeped through. For some reason, Tyrant Behemoth stopped moving forward when it arrived. It looked up at the rock crack. Could it be that Tyrant Behemoth went too deep diagonally and missed the mine? Zhou made Tyrant Behemoth stop. He stood on Tyrant Behemoth and leaned close to the crack to look inside. There was light inside, but he could only see the ceiling. Truth Listener's power spread out as a huge warehouse appeared in Zhou mind. There were rows of metal chests inside. The entire warehouse was very large. It was probably more than 1,000 square meters. There were rows of metal chests inside. There were many of them. Could this be the warehouse where they store the essence crystal ores? Zhou heart stirred as he used Truth Listener's ability to carefully observe. Soon, he discovered that there were indeed quite a number of mini companion beasts hidden in the warehouse. One of them looked like a cricket. It was staring at the crack as though it had sensed something. Zhou knew that he couldn't alarm them. Otherwise, Kai Jin and the other people from the bureau would immediately be alarmed. After some thought, he summoned some blood threadworms. These blood threadworms were obtained from the Zhuolu battlefield. They were even thinner than hair, and it was difficult to discover them with the naked eye. He let the blood threadworms crawl into the warehouse and carefully approached the companion beasts in the warehouse before letting them burrow into their bodies. The companion beasts received their master's orders and stayed motionless, making it easier for Zhou to take action. The blood threadworms crawled into their bodies and immediately affected their nerve. Although they wouldn't die for a while, they had already become demented. Without any hesitation, Zhou got Tyrant Behemoth to drill open a huge hole as he and his pet crawled into the warehouse. Zhou raised his hand and slashed open the lock of a metal chest. He lifted the lid and a dazzling light immediately emitted from the chest. It was filled with essence crystals. Holy sh*t, this warehouse probably has more than 1,000 metal chests, right? If they're all filled with essence crystals. Zhou found it unbelievable. As for Tyrant Behemoth, it was already drooling as it stared at the chest of essence crystals that Zhou had opened. Chapter 443. Eat. Eat as much as you can, Zhou ordered Tyrant Behemoth. Tyrant Behemoth roared and swallowed the chest of primordial crystals that Zhou had opened. After chewing a few times, it swallowed them. It wasn't afraid of indigestion. Following that, Tyrant Behemoth didn't even look at them. It opened its mouth and bit the metal chests, crushing them in 2 bites. Its bite force was just too astonishing. It ate metal and primordial crystals like they were jelly beans. Zhou didn't idle either. He opened a few chests and saw that they were filled with primordial crystals. He directly stored them into his chaos bead and placed them in one chest after another. These were all money. Zhou was used to being poor, so he had never seen so many valuable items. Anyway, he was moving them into the chaos bead. It wasn't that he had never seen good things, but those good things were in-game. No matter how many good things he had, he couldn't take them out. These primordial crystals were good things that could be used in the real world. Even if he sold them, he could sell them for a good price. If he needed any companion eggs or primordial energy skill crystals, he wouldn't need to waste time grinding. Now that he had money, he could use it to buy them. Previously, Zhou didn't know that there were so many primordial crystals stored here. He imagined that he had to get Tyrant Behemoth to mine, but to his surprise, it had already dug them up and placed them here. If he had known this would happen, Zhou would have long come. He wouldn't have waited for Tyrant Behemoth to evolve. He could have emptied the place himself. Tyrant Behemoth ate crate after crate, while Zhou moved crate after crate into his chaos space. The man and pet were in a frenzy. At that moment, Zhou suddenly thought of a great person's famous saying, "Working people are the most glorious." Zhou didn't know how many chests he had filled into the chaos bead. Apart from the ones he had moved in, the rest had been devoured by Tyrant Behemoth. He didn't know what this fellow's stomach was made of. After eating nearly 1,000 chests of primordial crystals, its stomach didn't bulge at all. Seeing Tyrant Behemoth look at him longingly, Zhou subconsciously held his chaos bead tightly. Then, he rolled his eyes and said to Tyrant Behemoth, "This is a primordial crystal mine. There must be many unmined primordial crystal mines outside. Let's go eat outside. You can eat as much as you want." Tyrant Behemoth seemed to understand Zhou as its eyes lit up like light bulbs. With a roar, it slammed its head into the ground. No matter how excited you are, you can't hit your head, right? Gluttons are indeed brainless, Zhou thought. However, to everyone's surprise, Tyrant Behemoth slammed its head into the warehouse's ground. The horns on its head spun, opening a huge hole in the rock before burrowing down. Zhou hurriedly followed it. Tyrant Behemoth drilled for a while before suddenly opening its mouth and biting at the rocks. Only then did Zhou realize that essence crystal ores had begun to appear in the surrounding rocks. They were like sparkling stars. Zhou had never seen Tyrant Behemoth use its mountain-devouring skill in a fight, but now, he had really seen it. It turned out that its skill wasn't used for fighting, but for eating. Tyrant Behemoth's mouth was like a black hole as it swallowed the rocks mixed with essence crystal ores. It was like a miniature black hole. Zhou was already satisfied with taking so many essence crystals, so he allowed Tyrant Behemoth to devour the essence crystal mine. Xin Yuqi was currently in Kai Jin's office. The essence crystal mine was the economic lifeline of the bureau. Xin Yuqi had told Kai Jin that unless he came personally, no one was allowed to take a single essence crystal from here. In order to purchase the Aurora Pith, he had no choice but to use some of the essence crystals in his inventory. However, this was just a drop in the bucket compared to the essence crystals in his inventory. Xin Yuqi wasn't worried about future financial problems. With the essence crystal mine as his backing, even if he didn't receive any funding for 10 years, the bureau could still lead a comfortable life. Furthermore, the 6 families definitely wouldn't stop the bureau's funding next year. After all, there were so many descendants of the 6 families working in the bureau. Even if he didn't want it, the 6 families would definitely give it to him in the future. Kai Jin, it's been hard on you to guard the essence crystal mine all these years. Xin Yuqi had always thought highly of Kai Jin. Although he was not the strongest of the 4 censors, he was the steadiest one. He did things flawlessly. He had guarded the primordial crystal mine for so many years and had never made a single mistake. It could be said that he was very conscientious. Director General, you're welcome. This is what I should do, Kaijin said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. He knew Shin Yuchi's temper. If he appeared to be too proud of himself, he would probably incur Shin Yuchi's displeasure. Yes, wait another 2 years. In 2 years, the position of Deputy Director General will be vacant. I plan on recommending you to take over, Shin Yuchi said. Thank you for your nurturing, Director General. Kaijin was truly delighted this time. The 4 censors sounded very famous, but in fact, they were Shin Yuchi's subordinate. However, it was different to become the Deputy Director General. He would be in a position of power. Just as Shin Yuchi was about to say something, an inspector suddenly knocked on the door and entered. He reported, "Sir, the people guarding the valley entrance have sent news that someone has invaded Don't Cry Valley. Do you know who it is?" Kaijin's expression didn't change much. Over the years, various factions had sent countless people to spy on the Essence Crystal Mine, but all of them returned empty-handed. He had seen it too many times. I don't know. That person was too fast. They couldn't see him clearly, but the surveillance cameras captured the scene. They printed it as a photo and brought it with them. With that said, the inspector handed a few photos to Kaijin. After Kaijin received it, he handed it to Shin Yuchi with both hands. With Shin Yuchi around, he naturally had to let him see it first. Shin Yuchi looked at the photo and saw that the person was covered in stone-like armor. He couldn't see the face at all, but he felt that the stone armor was a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. Kaijin, what do you think? Shin Yuchi pushed the photo in front of Kaijin. He trusted Kaijin very much. Kaijin looked at the photo and couldn't tell who it was, but he didn't panic. He said with a smile, "I've planted many companion beasts in the bamboo forest as informants. Those companion beasts were originally dropped by dimensional creatures in Don't Cry Valley. They aren't affected by the mysterious power of Don't Cry Valley. At the same time, it's very difficult for them to attract the attention of ordinary people. Even if the person can discover a portion of them, it's impossible for him to find all 300 companion beasts. As long as the person is discovered by a companion beast, I will sense it and determine his location. Up to now, none of the companion beasts have reacted. It means that the person hasn't entered the bamboo forest, or he has already died under the mysterious power of Don't Cry Valley." Chapter 444. Shin Yuchi was very satisfied with Kaijin's answer, but he still said without batting an eyelid, "What if the enemy can pass through the bamboo forest and reach the mine?" "Don't worry, Director General. There are also many rock elemental companion beasts in the mine. It won't be easily discovered. There's no need to mention the warehouse. The companion beasts set up were personally selected by me. They have extremely powerful concealment and reconnaissance abilities. Furthermore, their positions will be adjusted every week to prevent any possible problems," Kaijin said. "Okay." Shin Yuchi was rather satisfied with Kaijin's answer. When working in the bureau, one was most afraid of being careless. If there was any oversight, even a very small problem could trigger a chain reaction and cause huge trouble. Just by looking at Kaijin's arrangements of the mine, one could tell that he was very meticulous. He was indeed a good material. Endure it for another 2 years. In 2 years we will conquer the world together, Shin Yuchi said as he patted Kaijin on the shoulder. Kaijin said respectfully, "I'm willing to follow you for life, Director General." Heh. Shin Yuchi didn't comment. All he did was smile as he patted Kaijin on the shoulder. "Let's go to the warehouse to get some primordial crystals. The purchase of the Aurora Pith is very important, so we can only use the warehouse." Kaijin led the way as he asked, "Director General, can the Aurora Pith really advance a holy light angel to the mythical stage?" Shin Yuchi nodded and said, "Those experts have already proven it many times. As long as there's enough Aurora Pith, there's an 80% chance that a holy light angel can advance to the mythical stage. It would be great if it succeeds. Our bureau will have another trump card. We don't have to be subservient to those families anymore, Kai-Jin said. Don't spout nonsense. Our bureau is a subordinate organization of the House of Lords. We naturally have to obey the orders of our superiors. Furthermore, it's only a mythical companion beast. Don't tell me you really think it can fight them? Shin Yuchi said indifferently. It was a slip of the tongue, but it's still a ray of hope, Kai-Jin said. The primordial crystal mine is our hope. With it, we can exchange for the resources we need. Only then will we have a chance to nurture mythical companion beasts in the future. Watch it well. This is our fate, Shin Yuchi said seriously. Director General, don't worry. As long as the mine exists, we will. Kai-Jin made a military pledge. Shin Yuchi was about to say something when he saw an inspector running over in a panic. Why are you so flustered? What did I teach you? Kai-Jin reprimanded with a frown. Shin Yuchi hated people who panicked the most when they encountered something. Usually, Kai-Jin had never seen his subordinates so crude. Yet, Shin Yuchi had come in such a panic. Wouldn't that make Shin Yuchi think that his subordinates were incompetent? Sir, something happened in the mine. The inspector didn't calm down because of Kai-Jin's reprimand. He still said in a panic. What happened? Kai-Jin's heart skipped a beat. He immediately had a bad feeling. There could have been a problem at any time, but it had to happen when Shin Yuchi was here. The bottom of the mine has collapsed, and the mine below has been blocked. Our people can't go down now, and we don't know what's going on down there. The inspector briefly explained the situation. A large-scale collapse? Kai-Jin heaved a sigh of relief. If it was just a collapse, it wouldn't be a serious problem. At most, they would just have to spend some time digging. Call everyone over. Reinforce the mine first, then dig up the collapsed area. Let's see what happened, Kai-Jin instructed. Director General, let's go to the warehouse first, Kai-Jin said to Shin Yuchi after making the arrangements. Shin Yuchi nodded and followed Kai-Jin to the warehouse. He was quite satisfied with Kai-Jin's way of handling things. Accidents would always happen. As long as he had the ability to handle it, it was fine. Soon, the two of them passed through many checkpoints and arrived outside the warehouse. Only when Kai-Jin and Shin Yuchi were present could they open the door. Director General, please come in. Kai-Jin opened the door and made an inviting gesture. However, before Shin Yuchi could walk in, his gaze landed on the warehouse and his expression changed drastically. Kai-Jin, what's going on? Shin Yuchi's expression was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He stared at Kai-Jin with a fierce glint in his eyes. What do you mean, what's going on? Kai-Jin looked into the warehouse and was instantly dumbfounded. The warehouse was originally filled with rows of metal boxes, but now not a single one of them could be seen. The huge warehouse was empty except for two huge potholes on the ground. Director General, I really don't know what's going on. The companion beasts I set up are still there. Why isn't there any reaction? Yesterday, I even looked through the observation hole. The primordial crystals are all there. Kai-Jin stammered. He knew that the problem was huge. These primordial crystals could be said to be all the Special Inspector Bureau's wealth. Now, more than 1,000 boxes of primordial crystals had disappeared right under his nose. This was a huge crime. Shin Yuchi's face darkened as he didn't say a word. His figure moved like a shadow and instantly entered the warehouse. He stepped into one of the potholes and a sword beam shot out from his finger, slicing apart the gravel in the pothole as he charged deep into the pothole. Kai-Jin reacted and chased after him. When he caught up to Shin Yuchi, the scene in front of him left him dumbfounded. It was unknown what had dug out a huge space in the huge underground primordial crystal mine. It was as though the middle of a mountain had been hollowed out. There were only a few rocks supporting the upper layer. The other rock primordial crystal mines were gone. And this area was clearly the area with the most primordial crystal mines that they had already explored. No. Impossible! Kaijin was dumbfounded when he saw the top of the building cracking and the huge hole where rocks kept falling. Even if the miners were epic-ranked experts, it would probably take them 1.5 years to dig such a huge project. However, if someone had really dug for such a long time, it was impossible for him not to have noticed anything. Director General, I really don't know anything. Kaijin felt his body turn cold. This was a huge calamity. He didn't know how Shinyuchi would deal with him. Shinyuchi ignored him as he stared intently at the constantly collapsing underground hole. He remained motionless. After a while, Shinyuchi suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale as his body swayed. Director General. Kaijin was alarmed as he hurriedly went forward to support Shinyuchi. At that moment, Zhouwen had already left Don't Cry Valley. He originally wanted Tyrant Behemoth to eat more and leave nothing behind, but to his surprise, Tyrant Behemoth showed signs of evolving as it ate. He was afraid that it would evolve in the mine, and since he didn't know how to dig holes, he wouldn't be able to leave. All he could do was dig out with Tyrant Behemoth. Not long after entering the bamboo forest, Tyrant Behemoth began to evolve. It had eaten too many primordial crystals. Its body constantly emitted crystalline light, turning it back into a companion egg. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.